Have you ever witnessed that heart-stopping moment when fate reunites two souls across a crowded airplane? When the pilot rushed from his cockpit to defend the woman he once adored in college, their eyes met in a breathtaking dance of recognition, silencing the entire cabin as passengers witnessed the magnetic pull of a love that had quietly endured through the years of separation. Maya Bennett rushed through the crowded terminal of Atlanta International Airport, her carry-on rolling noisily behind her as she navigated through the sea of travelers. She was cutting it close, way too close for her liking. The digital board above showed her flight to San Francisco was already in the final boarding stages. Maya had always prided herself on being punctual, but today everything that could go wrong had gone wrong. Her alarm had failed to go off, her Uber driver had taken a wrong turn, and the security line had been painfully slow. "Final boarding call for Flight 2187 to San Francisco," the announcement echoed through the terminal as Maya broke into a sprint. She reached the gate just as the attendant was about to close the door. "Wait, please!" Maya called out, waving her boarding pass frantically. "I'm on this flight!" The gate attendant gave her a look that was equal parts annoyance and pity. "You just made it, ma'am. They're about to close the doors." "Thank you," Maya breathed, handing over her boarding pass with a grateful smile. Her heart was still pounding from the mad dash through the airport. "Seat 14A. Enjoy your flight," the attendant said, returning her documents. Maya made her way down the jet bridge, trying to compose herself before entering the aircraft. She took a deep breath and smoothed down her curly black hair, which had become somewhat disheveled during her sprint. As a marketing executive for a major tech company, Maya was used to presenting a polished, professional image. Even though this trip was half business, half personal, attending a conference and then staying a few extra days to visit her best friend from college, she still wanted to maintain her composure. The flight attendant at the door greeted her with a practiced smile. "Welcome aboard. 14A is on the left side, about halfway down." Maya nodded her thanks and made her way down the narrow aisle of the Boeing 737. The plane was nearly full, with passengers already settled in their seats, some with headphones on, others leafing through magazines or tapping away on their phones. She counted the rows as she walked. 10, 11, 12, 13. Finally, row 14 came into view. When she reached her assigned seat, Maya found it mercifully empty. The window seat, her preference when booking, awaited her. She quickly stowed her carry-on in the overhead compartment and slid into her seat, buckling her seatbelt with a sigh of relief. She had made it. Maya glanced at her seatmates. In the middle seat was an elderly man with silver hair and horn-rimmed glasses who offered her a kind smile before returning to his crossword puzzle. The aisle seat was occupied by a businessman in his 40s who was deeply engrossed in whatever he was reading on his tablet. Maya settled back, took out her phone to switch it to airplane mode, and allowed herself to relax for the first time that morning. The flight to San Francisco would take just over 4 hours, and she planned to use that time to review her presentation for the conference and perhaps catch up on some much-needed sleep. As the remaining flight attendants prepared for takeoff, Maya gazed out the window at the airport operations below. Ground crew in bright vests scurried around, loading luggage and performing final checks. It was a clear day, the Georgia sky a brilliant blue with just a few wispy clouds. Perfect flying weather. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Captain Davis speaking. I'd like to welcome you aboard Flight 2187 to San Francisco. We're just waiting for the final paperwork, and then we'll be on our way. Flight time today is approximately 4 hours and 15 minutes. Weather in San Francisco is partly cloudy with a temperature of 65 degrees. We're expecting a smooth flight today, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Flight attendants, prepare for departure." The voice sounded vaguely familiar to Maya, but she couldn't quite place it. It had a warm, confident tone that she found reassuring. After the stress of nearly missing her flight, she appreciated the calm, steady presence of the captain. As the flight attendants began their safety demonstration, A commotion broke out a few rows ahead. Maya couldn't see exactly what was happening, but she could hear raised voices. One in particular stood out, a woman speaking loudly and with clear irritation. "Excuse me, but there must be some mistake. We need to sit together as a family." Maya leaned slightly into the aisle to get a better view. A blonde woman in her late 30s, dressed in expensive-looking athleisure wear, was standing in the aisle. Next to her was a man who appeared to be her husband, looking uncomfortable with the situation, and two children, a boy and a girl, both around 8 to 10 years old. "Ma'am, as I explained, the flight is full. We can't change seat assignments at this point," a flight attendant was saying, her voice professionally patient. "But we always sit together when we travel." "Always," the blonde woman insisted. "Surely someone can move. Look, there's a single traveler right there." She pointed to a seat where a young black woman sat, her headphones on, seemingly unaware of the developing situation. Maya felt a twinge of discomfort. There was something about the way the blonde woman had singled out the passenger that felt off to her. The young woman wasn't doing anything wrong. She was simply occupying the seat she had been assigned. "Ma'am, that passenger has paid for her seat just like everyone else," the flight attendant explained, her patience clearly being tested. But the blonde woman wasn't backing down. She stepped closer to the young black woman and tapped her on the shoulder. The woman removed her headphones, looking up with a mixture of confusion and wariness. "Excuse me," the blonde woman said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Would you mind moving to another seat? My family needs to sit together, and you're in one of our seats." The young woman looked at her boarding pass and then back at the blonde woman. "I'm sorry, but this is my assigned seat, 15C. I checked in yesterday." "Yes, but we're a family," the blonde woman insisted, her smile hardening. "Surely you understand how important it is for us to sit together. There are plenty of other seats available." By now, several passengers were watching the exchange, some with open curiosity, others pretending not to notice while stealing glances. The flight attendant had moved on to help another passenger but was keeping an eye on the situation. The young black woman remained composed but firm. "I understand, but I specifically chose this seat for a reason. It's an aisle seat near the front, and I need to make a connection in San Francisco." The blonde woman's smile disappeared entirely. "Look, I don't think you understand. We paid a lot of money for these tickets, and we expect to sit together. It's just common courtesy." There was an unmistakable edge to her voice now, and Maya felt her stomach tighten. The implication that the young woman somehow owed this family her seat, that her needs were less important, carried an undercurrent that made Maya increasingly uncomfortable. The husband finally spoke up, tugging gently at his wife's arm. "Amber, maybe we should just take our assigned seats. It's not that big a deal." "Not a big deal?" Amber turned to him, her voice rising. "We always sit together as a family, Greg. Always. And I'm sure," she looked pointedly at the young black woman, "this person could be more accommodating." "This person has a name," the young woman said quietly but with dignity. "It's Jasmine Taylor. And while I sympathize with your situation, I'm not going to move from my assigned seat." Amber's face flushed red. "Well, I never. The rudeness of some people is just beyond belief." She turned to look for a flight attendant. "Excuse me, we have a situation here." Maya couldn't stay silent any longer. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up, making her way to the scene of the confrontation. "Excuse me," she said, addressing both women. "Is everything okay here?" Amber turned to Maya, seemingly relieved to find another ally. "No, everything is not okay. We're trying to sit together as a family, and this, Jasmine, is refusing to accommodate us." Maya looked at Jasmine, who met her gaze with a mixture of frustration and resolve. There was something familiar about her face, Maya thought, but she couldn't quite place it. "I understand wanting to sit with your family," Maya said carefully to Amber, "but it seems like Jasmine has her reasons for needing this particular seat. and it is her assigned seat. Amber's expression hardened. "Oh, I see. You're taking her side." "I'm not taking sides," Maya replied calmly. "I'm just saying that she has every right to the seat she was assigned." By now, a male flight attendant had approached. "Is there a problem here?" "Yes," Amber said immediately. "We need to sit together as a family, and this woman is refusing to move." The flight attendant looked at Jasmine, who showed him her boarding pass. "Ma'am, this is indeed her assigned seat. If you'd like, I can check if there are any other passengers who might be willing to switch, but we can't force anyone to give up their assigned seat." "This is ridiculous," Amber huffed. "We're paying customers." "So is everyone else on this plane," the flight attendant replied patiently. As the situation escalated, another flight attendant approached from the front of the plane. She leaned in and whispered something to her colleague, who nodded. "Ladies and gentlemen," the male flight attendant announced, "the captain has asked to speak with the passengers involved in this seating dispute. For now, please return to your assigned seats so we can prepare for takeoff." Maya returned to her seat, but kept watching the situation unfold. Amber reluctantly took her assigned seat, several rows away from her husband and children, shooting daggers at Jasmine with her eyes. The tension in the cabin was palpable as the flight attendants continued their preparations. About 5 minutes passed before the intercom crackled to life again. The passengers had settled into an uneasy calm, with Amber occasionally throwing pointed glares in Jasmine's direction. The children were seated with their father, looking confused by the entire situation. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking again. I apologize for the delay in our departure. It has come to my attention that we have a seating issue that needs to be resolved before we can take off. In the interest of ensuring a comfortable flight for everyone, I'm going to come out and address this personally. Please remain seated and we'll have this sorted out shortly." A murmur of surprise rippled through the cabin. It was unusual for a captain to leave the cockpit to handle a seating dispute. Maya found herself curious about what was going to happen next, and admittedly, a little impressed that the captain was taking such a hands-on approach to the situation. A few moments later, the cockpit door opened and the captain emerged. He was tall, with broad shoulders filling out his crisp uniform. His dark skin contrasted with the pristine white of his shirt, and he carried himself with a quiet authority that immediately commanded attention. As he made his way down the aisle, Maya could see his name badge, Captain Elijah Davis. Maya's breath caught in her throat. Elijah Davis. The name and face clicked into place in her memory. She had known him in college. They had shared several classes together in their freshman and sophomore years at Howard University before he had transferred to another school to complete his aviation program. They hadn't been close friends, but they had worked together on a few projects and had always been friendly with each other. She watched as Captain Davis approached the row where Jasmine was seated. His expression was professional, but there was a softness in his eyes as he looked at her that suggested something more than just a pilot addressing a passenger. "Ms. Taylor?" he said, his deep voice carrying easily through the cabin. Jasmine looked up, and her eyes widened in recognition. "Elijah?" A small smile played at the corner of his mouth. "It's been a while." Amber, seeing an opportunity, stood up again. "Captain, I'm so glad you're here. We've been trying to explain that we need to sit together as a family, but this woman refuses to move." Captain Davis turned to Amber, his expression neutral but firm. "Ma'am, I understand your concern, but I've been informed that Ms. Taylor is in her assigned seat. Airline policy is clear that passengers are entitled to the seats they've been assigned unless they voluntarily agree to move." "But we're a family," Amber insisted, her voice taking on a wheedling quality now that she was addressing someone in authority. "Surely you understand how important it is for us to be together, especially with the children." "I do understand," Captain Davis replied, his tone remaining even, "and I'm going to propose a solution that I hope will satisfy everyone." He turned to address the entire cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. We have a family who would like to sit together, which is a reasonable request. However, we also have passengers who have specific seating needs and have chosen their seats accordingly. In the spirit of finding a resolution that respects everyone's needs, I'd like to ask if there are any volunteers who would be willing to move to accommodate this family." There was a moment of silence, and then a hand went up a few rows behind Jasmine. It was an older woman, perhaps in her 60s. "I'm happy to move," she offered. "I don't have any connection to make." "Thank you, ma'am," Captain Davis said with a grateful nod. "We appreciate your flexibility." Another passenger, a young man in his 20s, also raised his hand. "I can move too, if it helps." "Thank you, sir," Captain Davis acknowledged. He turned to a flight attendant who had been standing nearby. "Sarah, could you please help these passengers find suitable alternative seating and assist the family in getting seated together?" "Of course, Captain," the flight attendant replied. As the flight attendant began coordinating the seat changes, Captain Davis turned back to Jasmine. "Ms. Taylor, you're welcome to keep your seat as assigned." Amber looked like she wanted to protest further, but her husband placed a restraining hand on her arm. "Amber, they've found a solution. Let's just take it and get settled." With a huff, Amber allowed herself to be led away by the flight attendant to rejoin her family in their newly arranged seating. The tension in the cabin began to dissipate as passengers returned their attention to their books, devices, or the view outside their windows. Captain Davis, however, lingered for a moment by Jasmine's seat. "It's good to see you, Jasmine," he said, his voice softer now, meant just for her. "It's been, 8 years?" Jasmine nodded, a smile breaking across her face. "At least. Not since that economics class we took together." "Macroeconomics with Professor Winters," he recalled with a grin. "You always had the answers when he called on me, and you always had my back when I got nervous during presentations," she replied. There was a comfortable familiarity between them that spoke of a shared history, Maya observed. She wondered if they had been more than just classmates. "Once we're at cruising altitude, maybe we can catch up," Captain Davis suggested. "I'd love to hear what you've been up to all these years." "I'd like that," Jasmine agreed, her earlier stress visibly melting away. With a nod and another smile, Captain Davis turned to head back to the cockpit. As he walked past Maya's row, their eyes met briefly. A flash of recognition crossed his face, but in his professional mode, he simply gave her a polite nod before continuing on his way. Once the captain had returned to the cockpit, the flight preparations resumed. The flight attendants completed their safety demonstration, and soon the aircraft was taxiing toward the runway. Maya couldn't help but think about the unexpected encounter she had just witnessed. Elijah Davis, a college acquaintance, now a commercial airline captain, reuniting with Jasmine, who clearly had been someone special to him. The plane accelerated down the runway and lifted into the sky, banking gently as it climbed toward cruising altitude. Maya gazed out the window, watching as Atlanta grew smaller beneath them, the sprawling city giving way to a patchwork of green and brown as they gained altitude. Once the seatbelt sign had been turned off and the flight attendants began their beverage service, Maya decided to stretch her legs. She unbuckled her seatbelt and made her way to the restroom at the front of the aircraft. As she passed Jasmine's row, she paused. "Excuse me," Maya said. "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I thought you handled that situation really well earlier." Jasmine looked up, surprised, then offered a grateful smile. "Thank you. It wasn't exactly how I planned to start my flight. Some people just feel entitled to whatever they want," Maya commented. She hesitated, then added, "I couldn't help but notice. You know the captain?" A soft blush colored Jasmine's cheeks. "We went to college together, Howard University. We were close friends." The way she said close friends suggested there might have been more to the story, but Maya didn't press. "Small world. I went to Howard too, actually. I think I remember seeing Elijah around campus. He was a few years ahead of me." Jasmine's eyes lit up with interest. Really? What year did you graduate? 2015, Maya replied. I was marketing, minor in digital communications. I was 2013 business administration, Jasmine said. And Elijah was the same year, started in business before transferring to Embry-Riddle for their aviation program. The Howard connection, Maya smiled. It follows you everywhere. It really does, Jasmine agreed. Were you in any clubs or organizations? Black Student Union and the Marketing Association. You? Student government and I wrote for the Hilltop sometimes, Jasmine replied, referring to the university's student newspaper. The conversation flowed easily, the shared alma mater creating an immediate bond. Maya learned that Jasmine was now a corporate attorney living in Oakland, and she was returning from a business trip to Atlanta. They discovered they had several mutual acquaintances from their Howard days, though their paths hadn't directly crossed during their time there. Would you like to join me? Jasmine asked, gesturing to the empty middle seat next to her. Unless you were on your way somewhere. Just to the restroom, but it can wait, Maya replied, sliding into the offered seat. So you and the captain? Jasmine laughed softly. It's a long story. We've got about 3.5 more hours, Maya pointed out with a grin. Jasmine seemed to consider this, then nodded. We dated for almost 2 years in college. It was pretty serious, actually. But then he got accepted into this prestigious flight program in Florida, and I was committed to staying at Howard for law school prep. We tried the long-distance thing for a while, but it's hard, Maya finished for her. Exactly. We were both so focused on our careers, and the distance just made everything more complicated. Eventually, we decided to end things. It was amicable, but still painful. We promised to stay in touch, but you know how these things go. Life happens. And now here you are, 8 years later on his flight. Maya marveled at the coincidence. I had no idea he was flying this route, Jasmine admitted. When I heard his voice over the intercom, I thought I was imagining things. And then when he came out, she shook her head, still seeming a bit dazed by the unexpected reunion. Do you think there's still something there? Maya asked, then immediately backtracked. I'm sorry, that's really none of my business. But Jasmine didn't seem offended. Honestly? I don't know. It's been so long, and we're both different people now. But seeing him again… She trailed off, a thoughtful expression on her face. Their conversation was interrupted by a flight attendant approaching from the front of the plane. She leaned down and spoke quietly to Jasmine. Ms. Taylor, Captain Davis asked if you might be available to come to the cockpit for a brief moment once his co-pilot takes over. He mentioned something about catching up with an old friend. Jasmine's eyes widened in surprise. Is that allowed? Normally, we're quite strict about cockpit visits, the flight attendant explained, but Captain Davis has cleared it with the airline's protocol. It would just be for a few minutes while we're at a stable cruising altitude and his co-pilot has full control of the aircraft. Jasmine looked to Maya as if seeking her opinion on this unexpected invitation. You should definitely go, Maya encouraged her. How often do you get a personal invitation to the cockpit from the captain? Especially when the captain is your ex, Jasmine added with a nervous laugh. She turned back to the flight attendant. Please tell Captain Davis I'd be happy to visit. The flight attendant nodded and made her way back to the front of the plane. Jasmine took a deep breath, smoothing down her blouse and checking her reflection in her phone's camera. How do I look? She asked Maya, a hint of vulnerability in her voice. Beautiful, Maya assured her honestly. He's going to be so happy to see you. It's just so unexpected, Jasmine said, shaking her head in disbelief. Of all the flights, on all the days. Maybe it's fate, Maya suggested with a smile. I don't know about fate, Jasmine replied, but it's definitely a surprise. A good one, I think. Maya returned to her own seat shortly after, leaving Jasmine to prepare for her cockpit visit. As she settled back in, she couldn't help but smile at the unexpected turn of events. What had started as an unpleasant confrontation had transformed into a potential reunion of old flames. There was something almost cinematic about it, the captain coming to the rescue, recognizing his college sweetheart, inviting her to the cockpit for a private moment. About 20 minutes later, Maya spotted Jasmine being escorted to the front of the plane by the same flight attendant. There was a nervous energy in Jasmine's movements, a mixture of excitement and apprehension that was visible even from several rows away. The flight attendant led her to the cockpit door, knocked gently, and then stepped aside as the door opened to reveal Captain Davis. Even from her seat, Maya could see the warm smile that spread across his face as he welcomed Jasmine into the cockpit. The door closed behind them, leaving the rest of the passengers to wonder about the unusual visit. Meanwhile, a few rows ahead, Amber had noticed the special treatment being given to Jasmine. She leaned across the aisle to her husband, speaking in a stage whisper that was clearly meant to be overheard. "Can you believe this? First, she refuses to accommodate a family, and now she's getting a private tour of the cockpit? Talk about preferential treatment." Her husband, looking increasingly uncomfortable with his wife's behavior, merely shrugged and kept his eyes on the tablet he was using to entertain their children. Maya tried to tune out Amber's commentary, focusing instead on the imagined reunion taking place behind the cockpit door. What would it be like to unexpectedly encounter someone who had once meant so much to you? Someone you had loved and planned a future with, before life pulled you in different directions? Inside the cockpit, Jasmine stood awkwardly just inside the door, taking in the impressive array of instruments and controls that filled the small space. The co-pilot, a friendly-looking woman in her 40s, gave her a welcoming nod before returning her attention to the flight instruments. "Jasmine, this is First Officer Chen," Elijah introduced them. "Lisa, this is Jasmine Taylor, an old friend from college." "Nice to meet you," Lisa said, extending a hand which Jasmine shook. "Elijah rarely invites guests to the cockpit, so you must be special." Jasmine felt a blush rising to her cheeks. "We go way back," she said simply. "I've got things under control here if you two want to catch up," Lisa offered, understanding the situation immediately. "Just keep it brief, per regulations." "Thanks, Lisa," Elijah said gratefully. He gestured to a small jump seat just behind his captain's chair. "Have a seat, Jasmine." As Jasmine settled into the seat, Elijah turned to face her, his expression a mixture of disbelief and delight. "I still can't believe it's really you. When I saw your name on the passenger manifest this morning, I thought there had to be some mistake. How many Jasmine Taylors could there be, right? But still, the odds. You checked the passenger list for my name?" Jasmine asked, surprised. Elijah looked slightly embarrassed. "I might have glanced at it more carefully than usual when I saw there was a J. Taylor listed, just on the off chance." "And then that woman tried to make me move," Jasmine said, shaking her head at the memory. "I heard the commotion from in here," Elijah confirmed. "When they told me what was happening and mentioned your name specifically, I knew I had to come out." "My knight in shining armor," Jasmine teased, falling back into their old familiar banter with surprising ease. "More like knight in polyester uniform," he quipped, tugging at the fabric of his pilot's jacket. "But seriously, how have you been, Jazz? It's been too long." Jasmine smiled at the use of her old nickname. Only Elijah had ever called her that. "I've been good, busy. I finished law school at Howard, passed the California bar on my first try, and now I'm working for a corporate firm in Oakland, mostly intellectual property law, some contract work." "I always knew you'd make an amazing lawyer," Elijah said with evident pride. "Remember how you used to destroy everyone in debates in our political science class?" "I remember you being a worthy opponent," she replied with a smile. "What about you? Obviously the flying thing worked out." "It did," he confirmed. "After Embry-Riddle, I flew for a regional carrier for a few years, built up my hours, and joined the major airlines about 4 years ago, made captain last year." "That's incredible, Elijah. You always said you'd be a captain before 30, and look at you." There was a moment of comfortable silence between them. both reflecting on the paths their lives had taken. "I tried to find you on social media a few times," Elijah admitted after a pause, "but you've always been hard to track down." "I'm not big on social media," Jasmine acknowledged. "Occupational hazard of being a lawyer, I guess. Always worried about what might come back to bite me." "Smart as ever," he said with admiration. "I should have tried harder to keep in touch." "We both could have," Jasmine replied softly. "But we were young and focused on our careers. It's no one's fault." Another comfortable silence fell between them. Despite the years apart, there was still an undeniable connection, a familiarity that couldn't be erased by time or distance. "Are you seeing anyone?" Elijah asked finally, his tone carefully casual. Jasmine shook her head. "Not at the moment. There was someone last year, but it didn't work out. You?" "No," he replied. "I was engaged about 2 years ago, but we called it off. The lifestyle was tough on her, the irregular hours, the constant travel. She wanted me to switch to a desk job, but you belong in the sky," Jasmine finished for him, remembering how passionate he had always been about flying. He nodded, grateful for her understanding. "Exactly." From the captain's chair, Lisa cleared her throat discreetly. "Sorry to interrupt, but we should probably wrap up the visit soon. Regulations and all that." "Of course," Elijah said, straightening up slightly. "Just 1 more minute?" Lisa nodded, returning her attention to the controls. Elijah turned back to Jasmine, his expression suddenly earnest. "Look, I know this is crazy and unexpected, but I don't want to lose touch again. I'm based in San Francisco now. If you're free sometime, maybe we could get coffee, catch up properly." Jasmine felt her heart quicken. After all these years, after the pain of their separation and the paths their lives had taken, here he was, asking to see her again. It seemed almost too serendipitous to be real. "I'd like that," she said simply. "I'd like that a lot." Elijah's face broke into a wide smile, the same one that had first captured her heart all those years ago in a crowded lecture hall at Howard. "Great. That's really great. I should probably get back to my seat," Jasmine said, though she made no move to stand. "Right," Elijah agreed, equally reluctant for the moment to end. "Let me give you my number." They quickly exchanged contact information, both acutely aware of the limited time they had. "I'll walk you back," Elijah offered, rising from his seat. "Captain," Lisa began, a warning in her tone. "Just to the door," he assured her with a grin. "I'm not abandoning my post." As they reached the cockpit door, Elijah paused. "It really is amazing to see you again, Jas," he said softly. "Of all the flights, all the passengers." "Must be that Howard connection," she replied with a smile. "It follows you everywhere." Elijah laughed. "That it does." He hesitated for a moment, then leaned in and gently kissed her cheek. "See you in San Francisco?" "See you in San Francisco," she confirmed, her skin tingling where his lips had touched. With that, he opened the door, and Jasmine stepped back into the main cabin, where the flight attendant was waiting to escort her back to her seat. As she walked down the aisle, she was aware of the curious glances from other passengers, including a particularly sour look from Amber. But Jasmine barely registered them. Her mind was filled with the unexpected reunion and the promise of what might come next. When Jasmine returned to her seat, Maya couldn't resist leaning across the aisle to whisper, "So, how was the cockpit tour?" Jasmine turned to her, a radiant smile lighting up her face. "It was unexpected, in the best possible way." "I knew it," Maya said with satisfaction. "There's definitely still something there." "Maybe," Jasmine acknowledged, her fingers lightly touching the spot on her cheek where Elijah had kissed her. "We'll see." For the remainder of the flight, Jasmine seemed to be in a pleasant daze, alternating between gazing out the window and smiling to herself as she remembered moments from her conversation with Elijah. Maya, observing from her seat, felt a vicarious thrill at witnessing what might be the beginning of a rekindled romance. About an hour before landing, Captain Davis's voice came over the intercom again. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're about to begin our initial descent into San Francisco. Weather at our destination is clear and sunny with a temperature of 68 degrees. We should be on the ground in approximately 50 minutes. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for arrival." There was something different in his voice now, a warmth, an undercurrent of joy that hadn't been there before. Maya caught Jasmine's eye across the aisle and they shared a knowing smile. The descent into San Francisco was smooth, the plane banking gently as it approached the bay. Through her window, Maya could see the iconic Golden Gate Bridge in the distance, partially shrouded in the city's famous fog. As they got closer to the airport, the details of the city came into view. The clustered buildings of downtown, the sprawling neighborhoods, the blue expanse of the bay dotted with boats. When the plane touched down on the runway, there was the usual chorus of relieved sighs and scattered applause from passengers. The aircraft taxied to the gate, and Captain Davis's voice came over the intercom one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to San Francisco International Airport. Local time is 1:45 p.m. On behalf of the entire crew, I want to thank you for flying with us today. We know you have a choice in airlines, and we appreciate you choosing us for your travel needs. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened until we've arrived at the gate and the seatbelt sign has been turned off. For those connecting to other flights, please check the monitors in the terminal for the most up-to-date gate information. And for those of you for whom San Francisco is your final destination, we hope you enjoy your stay in this beautiful city." There was a brief pause, and then he added, "And to all passengers, thank you for your patience with our slight delay in departure. Sometimes unexpected situations lead to unexpected joys. Safe travels, everyone." Jasmine's face flushed at the thinly veiled reference, and several nearby passengers who had witnessed the earlier drama gave knowing smiles. As the plane pulled up to the gate and the seatbelt sign was turned off, passengers began the usual rush to retrieve their belongings and form a line in the aisle. Amber and her family were among the first to stand, gathering their numerous carry-ons and herding their children toward the exit. As they passed Jasmine's row, Amber couldn't resist a parting shot. "Enjoy your special treatment," she said with a sniff. "Some of us don't need to use our connections to get ahead." Before Jasmine could respond, Maya spoke up from across the aisle. "And some of us don't need to belittle others to feel important. Safe travels." Amber's face reddened, but with her husband gently pulling her along and the line of passengers behind them pressing forward, she had no choice but to move on. "Thank you," Jasmine said to Maya once Amber was out of earshot. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Maya replied firmly. "Howard alumni stick together, right?" "Right," Jasmine agreed with a grateful smile. As the passengers continued to file off the plane, Jasmine and Maya remained in their seats, letting the crowd thin out. There was an unspoken agreement between them to wait, though neither explicitly mentioned why. Both knew that Jasmine was hoping for one more glimpse of Elijah before they disembarked. "So," Maya said as they waited, "what happens now? With you and the captain, I mean." Jasmine smoothed a non-existent wrinkle from her slacks. "We exchanged numbers. He suggested getting coffee while I'm in town." "Just coffee?" Maya asked with a raised eyebrow. Jasmine laughed softly. "For now, yes. It's been 8 years, Maya. We're different people now. We can't just pick up where we left off." "But you want to see where it might go," Maya suggested. "I do," Jasmine admitted. "Is that crazy? We broke up for good reasons. The distance, our careers, the timing. All of that still exists." "But you're both established in your careers now," Maya pointed out. "And if he's based in San Francisco and you're in Oakland, that's what? A 30-minute drive? That's hardly long distance." Jasmine considered this. True. But there's still his schedule. Pilots aren't exactly known for their 9 to 5 hours. "Neither are corporate attorneys," Maya countered. "Look, I'm not saying it would be easy, but if there's still something there, If you both still feel that connection after all this time, doesn't that deserve a chance? Before Jasmine could respond, the cockpit door opened and Elijah emerged. He was speaking with his co-pilot Lisa, but his eyes immediately scanned the cabin, landing on Jasmine with a warm smile. He said something to Lisa, who nodded and continued down the aisle to exit the aircraft, while Elijah made his way toward Jasmine and Maya. "Ms. Taylor," he said formally as he approached, though his eyes sparkled with private amusement. "I hope the remainder of your flight was comfortable." "Very much so, Captain Davis," Jasmine replied with equal formality, playing along. "Your landing was impressively smooth." "I aim to please," he said, then turned to Maya. "And I hope you enjoyed your flight as well, Ms. Bennett," Maya supplied. "Maya Bennett. And yes, it was a lovely flight. Very eventful." Elijah laughed. "That's one word for it." He looked at Maya more closely. "Bennett, from Howard, right? You were a couple of years behind us, I think." Maya was surprised he remembered. "That's right. We had a few mutual friends, I think." "The Howard connection strikes again," Elijah said with a grin. "It really is a small world." By now, most of the passengers had disembarked, and the flight attendants were busy preparing the cabin for the next flight. One of them approached Elijah. "Captain, the new crew will be boarding in about 15 minutes, she informed him. "Thank you, Sarah," Elijah acknowledged. He turned back to Jasmine and Maya. "I should let you ladies get on with your day. Jasmine, I'll text you about that coffee." "Please do," she replied with a smile. "It was nice seeing you again, Maya," Elijah added. "Safe travels." "You too, Captain," Maya responded, unable to keep a hint of teasing from her voice. With a final smile at Jasmine that held promises of things to come, Elijah made his way back to the cockpit to complete his post-flight duties. Maya and Jasmine gathered their belongings and finally exited the aircraft, thanking the flight attendants as they left. As they walked up the jet bridge toward the terminal, Maya nudged Jasmine playfully. "So, definitely still something there," she said. Jasmine's attempt at a stern look was undermined by the smile she couldn't suppress. "Maybe. We'll see." "I want updates," Maya insisted as they entered the bustling terminal. "This is the most romantic thing I've witnessed in ages." "We're just getting coffee," Jasmine reminded her, but her tone lacked conviction. "Uh-huh," Maya said skeptically. "Just coffee with the guy who literally stopped an entire flight because he recognized you. The guy who invited you to the cockpit for a private reunion. The guy who kissed your cheek in a way that had you touching that spot for the next hour." "Was I that obvious?" Jasmine asked, wincing. "Only to someone who was watching closely," Maya assured her. "Which, admittedly, I was. But it's sweet, Jasmine. It's like something out of a movie." They had reached the point where they would need to part ways. Jasmine to baggage claim, Maya to her connecting flight to downtown San Francisco. "This is me," Maya said, gesturing toward her gate. "But seriously, I want to hear how that coffee date goes. Here, let me give you my number." They exchanged contact information, and then embraced as if they were old friends rather than new acquaintances who had met just hours ago. "Thank you for standing up for me earlier," Jasmine said as they pulled apart. "With that woman, Amber. Not everyone would have done that." "It was the right thing to do," Maya replied simply. "And besides, you never know when speaking up might lead to something amazing. If that whole situation hadn't happened, the captain might never have come out of the cockpit, and you two might have missed each other entirely." Jasmine's eyes widened at the realization. "You're right. It's strange to think that something so unpleasant could lead to something so unexpected." "Life's funny that way," Maya said with a smile. "Anyway, I better run if I'm going to make my connection. Don't forget to text me about that coffee date." "I won't," Jasmine promised. "Safe travels, Maya." With a final wave, Maya headed toward her gate, leaving Jasmine to make her way to baggage claim. As she walked, Jasmine couldn't help but reflect on the extraordinary turn her day had taken. What had started as a routine business trip had transformed into a potential second chance with the man she had once thought might be the love of her life. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out to find a text from an unfamiliar number. "Just finished my post-flight checks. Free tomorrow afternoon for that coffee? Elijah." Jasmine smiled to herself as she typed her reply. "Tomorrow afternoon works perfectly. Just tell me when and where." 3 dots appeared immediately, indicating he was typing a response. "How about 3 p.m. at Cafe Luminosa in Union Square? It's my favorite spot when I'm not flying." "Sounds perfect," she replied. "Looking forward to it." His response came quickly. "Me too. More than you know." Jasmine tucked her phone away, a warm glow of anticipation spreading through her. Whatever tomorrow might bring, she was grateful for the unexpected twist of fate that had brought Elijah back into her life. Meanwhile, Maya had reached her gate just as boarding was beginning for her short flight to downtown San Francisco. As she waited in line, she couldn't stop smiling, thinking about the romance she had witnessed blossoming on her previous flight. There was something so hopeful about it, so affirming of the idea that connections could endure across time and distance, that second chances were possible. When she reached her seat on the small commuter plane, Maya settled in and gazed out the window, watching the ground crew prepare for departure. Her thoughts drifted to Jasmine and Elijah, and she found herself genuinely invested in their story. It wasn't often that one got to witness the beginning of what might be a beautiful reunion. The flight to downtown San Francisco was brief, just enough time for a quick beverage service before they were descending toward the small airfield. Maya collected her carry-on and made her way through the compact terminal where her friend Sophia was waiting to pick her up. "Maya!" Sophia called, waving enthusiastically from beyond the security checkpoint. The two friends embraced warmly, having not seen each other in person for nearly a year despite their regular video chats. "How was your flight?" Sophia asked as they headed toward the parking garage. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you," Maya replied with a laugh. "Try me," Sophia challenged, always eager for a good story. As they drove toward Sophia's apartment in the heart of the city, Maya recounted the drama that had unfolded on her flight from Atlanta, the entitled woman trying to make Jasmine move, the captain's intervention, the revelation that the captain and Jasmine had a romantic history, and the potential rekindling of that relationship. "That's incredible," Sophia said when Maya had finished. "It's like something out of a romance novel." "I know, right?" Maya agreed. "I mean, what are the odds? Of all the flights she could have been on, she ends up on his. And then that woman creating a scene that brings him out of the cockpit. It's like the universe was conspiring to bring them back together." "So they're meeting for coffee tomorrow?" Sophia asked, clearly invested in the story now too. "Yes, somewhere in Union Square. Cafe Luminosa, I think she said." Sophia's eyes widened. "No way! That's just a few blocks from my apartment. We should totally go spy on them." "Sophia!" Maya exclaimed, laughing. "We can't spy on their date. That would be crossing a line." "Not spy exactly," Sophia backtracked. "Just happen to get coffee at the same place at the same time. Pure coincidence." "Absolutely not," Maya said firmly, though she was still smiling. "Besides, I promised Jasmine I'd get an update from her afterward. I don't want to intrude on their privacy." "Fine," Sophia conceded with a dramatic sigh. "But I expect a full report. This is the most exciting thing I've heard in ages." "Deal," Maya agreed as they pulled into the parking garage beneath Sophia's building. As they unloaded Maya's luggage and headed toward the elevator, Sophia asked, "So, what about your conference? Isn't that why you're here in the first place?" "Oh, right," Maya said, having momentarily forgotten the professional purpose of her trip amid the romantic drama she had witnessed. "It starts the day after tomorrow. I have all of tomorrow to prepare my presentation and get settled." "Perfect," Sophia declared. "Then tonight we celebrate your arrival with wine and catching up, and tomorrow you can focus on work while I pine for updates about the pilot and his long-lost love." Maya laughed. "You're incorrigible, you know that?" "It's part of my charm," Sophia replied with a wink. Across the bay in Oakland, Jasmine had finally reached her apartment after retrieving her luggage and taking a rideshare from the airport. She set her suitcase down in the entryway and took a moment to breathe in the familiar scent of home. After the unexpected emotional roller coaster of the day, it felt grounding to be back in her own space. She moved through the apartment, opening windows to let in the fresh Bay Area air, checking her plants, and sorting through the mail that had accumulated during her brief trip to Atlanta. But all the while, her mind kept returning to Elijah, his smile, his voice, the way he had looked at her with those warm brown eyes that still held the same depth and kindness she remembered. After unpacking her suitcase and putting a load of laundry in the washing machine, Jasmine made herself a cup of tea and curled up on her couch. She took out her phone and opened her text conversation with Elijah, rereading their brief exchange about meeting for coffee tomorrow. It still felt surreal, like a dream she might wake from at any moment. On impulse, she typed a new message. "Still processing the fact that of all the flights in all the world, I ended up on yours today." His reply came almost immediately. "I was just thinking the same thing. Must be fate." Jasmine smiled at his response. She had never been one to believe in fate or destiny, preferring to see life as a series of choices and consequences. But today's events had her reconsidering. What were the chances that after 8 years of no contact, they would reconnect in such a dramatic way? "Perhaps," she typed back. "Or maybe just extraordinarily good luck." "Either way," he responded. "I'm grateful for it. And for that passenger who made a scene. Never thought I'd say that." Jasmine laughed out loud at that. "Silver linings, I suppose, though I could have done without her attitude." "True, but without her I might never have known you were on board. The universe works in mysterious ways." "Now you sound like my mother," Jasmine teased. "She's always talking about the universe and its plans." "Smart woman, your mother. How is she, by the way?" The conversation flowed naturally from there, transitioning from the events of the day to catching up on their families, reminiscing about shared memories from college, and gradually filling in the gaps of the years they had spent apart. Before Jasmine knew it, an hour had passed, and she had to reluctantly end the conversation to prepare for a conference call with a client. "I should go," she texted. "Work calls, but I'm looking forward to tomorrow." "Me too," Elijah replied. "See you at 3. Sleep well, Jazz." The use of her old nickname sent a pleasant warmth through Jasmine. "You too, Eli," she responded, using her own nickname for him from their college days. Setting her phone aside, Jasmine took a deep breath and tried to refocus her thoughts on her upcoming client call. But her mind kept drifting back to Elijah and the possibilities that tomorrow might bring. After so many years apart, would they still have the same chemistry? Would the connection they once shared still be there, or had time and distance changed them too much? She shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. One step at a time, she reminded herself. Tomorrow was just coffee, a chance to catch up properly. There was no need to get ahead of herself or build up expectations that might lead to disappointment. Still, as she prepared for her call, Jasmine couldn't help but feel a flutter of excitement in her stomach. Whatever tomorrow might bring, she was looking forward to it more than she had anticipated. The next morning dawned clear and bright in the Bay Area. Jasmine woke early, her body still on East Coast time, and used the extra hours to catch up on work emails and prepare for a meeting she had scheduled for later in the week. But as the morning progressed, her thoughts increasingly turned to her upcoming coffee date with Elijah. What should she wear? Something casual but nice, she decided. Not too formal, as if she were trying too hard, but not too casual either. She wanted to look good, to make a positive impression after all these years. After much deliberation, she settled on a pair of well-fitted dark jeans, a soft blue blouse that brought out her eyes, and a light blazer that added a touch of sophistication without being overly formal. She spent extra time on her makeup, opting for a natural look that enhanced her features without being obvious, and decided to wear her hair down in loose waves. As she got ready, Jasmine's phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Good luck today. Can't wait to hear all about your coffee date with Captain Charming." Jasmine smiled at the message. Despite having just met yesterday, she already felt a connection with Maya, a sense of camaraderie born from their shared Howard experience and the extraordinary circumstances of their meeting. "Thanks," she replied. "I'm a bit nervous, to be honest. It's been so long." Maya's response came quickly. "Totally understandable. But from what I saw yesterday, he's just as interested as you are. Just be yourself. That's clearly who he wants to see." The encouragement helped calm Jasmine's nerves somewhat. Maya was right. Elijah had seemed genuinely happy to see her, eager to reconnect. There was no need to be anyone other than herself. Across the bay in San Francisco, Elijah was going through his own preparations for the afternoon. Having completed a morning flight to Los Angeles and back, he now had the rest of the day off. He showered and changed out of his uniform into casual clothes, dark jeans and a charcoal button-down shirt that fit him well without looking like he was trying too hard. As he got ready, Elijah found himself uncharacteristically nervous. He had dated since Jasmine, had even been engaged briefly, but there was something about seeing her again that had stirred feelings he thought had long since been resolved. Their relationship in college had been intense and meaningful. His first real love, the person he had once thought he might spend his life with before their careers had pulled them in different directions. Seeing her yesterday, though, had made him wonder if perhaps their timing had just been off. They had been young, still figuring out their paths in life. Now, established in their careers and more sure of themselves, might things be different? He checked his watch. 1:30 p.m. Still plenty of time before he needed to leave for Café Luminosa. He used the time to tidy his apartment, a modest but comfortable one-bedroom with a small balcony that offered a partial view of the bay. It had been his home for the past 3 years, ever since he had been permanently assigned to the San Francisco base. At precisely 2:15 p.m., Elijah left his apartment, deciding to walk to Union Square. The day was pleasant, typical San Francisco weather, sunny but with a cool breeze coming off the bay. The walk would give him time to clear his head and calm his nerves before seeing Jasmine. As he walked, he found himself reflecting on the unexpected turn of events that had brought them back into each other's orbits. If that passenger, Amber, he recalled from the incident report, hadn't made such a scene, he might never have known Jasmine was on his flight. The thought was unsettling. The idea that they could have been so close yet remained unaware of each other's presence. But fate, or luck, or simple chance had intervened, creating an opportunity that neither of them had anticipated. Now the question was what they would make of it. Elijah reached Café Luminosa at 2:45 p.m., 15 minutes before their agreed meeting time. The cafe was one of his favorite spots in the city, a cozy establishment with warm lighting, comfortable seating, and exceptional coffee. He chose a table near the back, away from the main flow of customers but with a clear view of the entrance so he would see Jasmine when she arrived. He ordered an Americano and settled in to wait, trying to ignore the nervous energy that had him tapping his fingers against the table. It was just coffee, he reminded himself, a chance to catch up with an old friend. There was no need to put so much pressure on the meeting. But even as he thought this, Elijah knew he was lying to himself. Jasmine had never been just a friend, and seeing her again after all these years had made it clear that his feelings for her, while dormant, had never truly disappeared. At precisely 3 p.m., the cafe door opened and Jasmine walked in. She paused just inside the entrance, scanning the room until her eyes found Elijah. A smile spread across her face, genuine and warm, and Elijah felt his heart skip a beat. She looked beautiful, he thought, as she made her way toward him. The years had added a maturity to her features, a confidence in her bearing that only enhanced the natural grace she had always possessed. Elijah stood as she approached the table. "Jasmine," he said, his voice warm with genuine pleasure, "you look amazing." So do you, she replied, her eyes taking in his appearance with evident appreciation. It's good to see you, Eli. Without the uniform, I mean. He laughed softly at that. What? You don't like the captain's stripes? Oh, they're very impressive, she assured him with a teasing smile. But they're not the Elijah I remember. And who was that Elijah? He asked, curious about how she remembered him from their college days. Passionate, driven, always with his head in the clouds. Literally and figuratively, she said, her expression softening with memory. The guy who used to drag me outside at 2 a.m. to look at the stars and tell me about constellations I couldn't see. Elijah smiled at the memory. You always humored me, even when it was freezing cold. Because your enthusiasm was contagious, she replied simply. It still is, I think. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken when a barista approached to take Jasmine's order. She chose a cappuccino, and once the barista had left, they settled into conversation that flowed with surprising ease given the years that had passed. They talked about their careers first, safe, neutral ground. Elijah described his journey from flight school to becoming a captain, the challenges and rewards of his chosen path. Jasmine shared stories from law school and her early years practicing, the cases that had shaped her career and the firm where she now worked. From there, the conversation naturally evolved to more personal topics, family updates, mutual friends from Howard, places they had visited, books they had read. With each passing minute, the initial awkwardness dissolved, replaced by a familiar comfort that felt both new and nostalgic. Do you remember Professor Winter's economics final? Elijah asked, laughing at the memory. You were so stressed you stayed up for 3 days straight preparing. And you brought me coffee and forced me to take breaks, Jasmine recalled with a smile. You said if I didn't sleep, my brain would turn to mush and all that studying would be wasted. Well, it worked, didn't it? You aced that final. We both did, she reminded him. We were a good team back then. The phrase hung in the air between them, laden with unspoken meaning. They had been a good team, in their studies, in their relationship, in the plans they had made for a future together before reality had intervened. We were, Elijah agreed softly. He hesitated, then added, I've missed that. Missed you. Jasmine's eyes met his, searching. I've missed you too, she admitted. More than I realized until I saw you yesterday. Another silence fell, this one charged with a tension that hadn't been there before. 8 years of separation, of lives lived independently, of other relationships and experiences, and yet, sitting across from each other in this cafe, it felt as if no time had passed at all. Can I ask you something? Jasmine said finally, breaking the silence. Anything, Elijah replied, meaning it. Why didn't you fight harder for us back then? When you got accepted to Embry-Riddle and I decided to stay at Howard, why did we let distance be the thing that ended us? It was a question Elijah had asked himself many times over the years, especially during the lonely nights in anonymous hotel rooms that came with his profession. Why had they given up so easily on something that had felt so right? I was young and stupid, he said honestly. I thought I was doing the right thing by letting you go, by not asking you to compromise your plans for mine. And maybe part of me was afraid that if I asked you to wait, to commit to a long-distance relationship with no clear end date, you might say no. And that would have hurt more than a mutual decision to end things. Jasmine nodded, understanding in her eyes. I was afraid too, she confessed. Afraid that the distance would change us, that we'd grow apart naturally and end up resenting each other. It seemed cleaner, kinder somehow to end things when we still loved each other. And now? Elijah asked, the question soft but direct. How do you feel now? Jasmine took a breath, considering her words carefully. Now I think maybe we were too quick to assume distance would be our downfall. Maybe we didn't give ourselves enough credit. We were young, Elijah said, echoing his earlier sentiment. We thought we had to choose, career or relationship. It didn't occur to us that we might be able to have both, just not on the timeline we had originally planned. And now we're older and hopefully wiser, Jasmine said with a small smile, with established careers and a much shorter distance between us. 30 minutes across the bay, Elijah confirmed, hope rising in his chest. 30 minutes isn't long distance, Jasmine said, echoing Maya's words from the previous day. No, Elijah agreed. It's not. He reached across the table, hesitating briefly before covering Jasmine's hand with his own. So, where does that leave us, Jas? Jasmine turned her hand beneath his, their fingers intertwining naturally. I don't know exactly, she admitted, but I'd like to find out. If you would? I would, Elijah said without hesitation. Very much. Their eyes met across the table, and in that moment, both felt the weight of their shared history, the love they had once had, the pain of their separation, and now, the tentative hope of a new beginning. The barista approached with a fresh round of coffees, breaking the intensity of the moment. As she set the cups down, Jasmine and Elijah reluctantly untangled their hands, but the connection between them remained, vibrant and renewed. So, Elijah said once the barista had left, his tone deliberately lighter. What do you think about dinner tonight? There's this great little Italian place not far from here. Jasmine smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached her eyes. I'd like that, she said. I'd like that very much. As they continued their conversation, making plans for the evening and sharing more stories from their years apart, neither could shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. A door that had been closed for 8 years had suddenly reopened, offering a glimpse of a path they had once thought lost to them. Whether that path would lead to a lasting reunion or simply closure on an important chapter of their lives remained to be seen. But for now, sitting across from each other in the warm, inviting atmosphere of Café Luminosa, both Jasmine and Elijah were content to take the first step and see where it might lead. Several tables away, unnoticed by either Jasmine or Elijah, a familiar blonde woman sat nursing a latte, her expression a mixture of disbelief and annoyance. Amber had come to Café Luminosa by pure chance, having spent the morning shopping in Union Square. But the sight of Jasmine, the woman who had refused to give up her seat on yesterday's flight, now sitting with the captain who had intervened, the two of them clearly sharing more than just coffee, was almost too much to bear. She considered approaching their table, saying something cutting or sarcastic to disrupt their evident happiness. But a memory from the flight stopped her. The quiet dignity with which Jasmine had stood her ground, the calm authority the captain had displayed, and most embarrassingly, the way the other passengers had looked at Amber herself with obvious disapproval. Perhaps, she thought reluctantly, she had been in the wrong. Perhaps her expectation that a stranger should inconvenience herself for Amber's family had been unreasonable. The thought was uncomfortable, challenging her usual perception of herself as someone who simply knew what she wanted and wasn't afraid to ask for it. With a sigh, Amber gathered her shopping bags and stood to leave. As she passed near Jasmine and Elijah's table, she caught a fragment of their conversation, something about second chances and making up for lost time. Despite herself, Amber felt a twinge of something that might have been envy or perhaps even a grudging respect. Without interrupting or acknowledging them, Amber quietly exited the cafe, stepping out into the bustling activity of Union Square. The encounter had left her with an uncomfortable feeling of self-reflection, a realization that perhaps her behavior on the flight had been less than admirable. Greg had tried to tell her as much, but she had dismissed his concerns at the time. As she walked toward the parking garage where they had left their rental car, Amber found herself thinking about the look she had just witnessed between Jasmine and the captain, a look of genuine connection, of shared history and possible future. It was the kind of look she couldn't remember sharing with Greg in quite some time. When had they become so disconnected? When had her determination to have things her way become more important than considering others' feelings, including those of her own husband? These were uncomfortable questions, ones she wasn't entirely ready to face. But the seed had been planted, and as she made her way back to their hotel, Amber couldn't help but wonder if perhaps it was time for some changes in her own life. Meanwhile, back at Cafe Luminosa, Jasmine and Elijah remained blissfully unaware of Amber's presence and departure, completely absorbed in their reunion. "I still can't believe we're sitting here together after all this time," Jasmine said, shaking her head slightly in wonder. "If you had told me yesterday morning that I'd be having coffee with you today, I would have thought you were crazy." "Life has a way of surprising us," Elijah replied with a smile. "Though I have to admit, I've thought about reaching out to you over the years. I just never quite found the courage." "Really?" Jasmine asked, surprise evident in her voice. "Why not?" Elijah considered the question, wanting to give her an honest answer. "Fear, I suppose. Fear that you'd moved on completely, that you were happy without me, maybe even married with kids. Fear that reaching out would seem like I was trying to disrupt your life." "I've thought about reaching out too," Jasmine admitted, "especially after my last relationship ended. He was a great guy, but there was always something missing, and I found myself comparing him to you, which wasn't fair to him." "I know what you mean," Elijah nodded. "My ex-fiancée actually called me on it once. She said I was emotionally unavailable, that there was a part of me I was holding back. She wasn't wrong." They lapsed into thoughtful silence, each contemplating the impact they had continued to have on each other's lives even during their years apart. "It's strange," Jasmine said finally, "how someone can continue to shape your life even in their absence." "It is," Elijah agreed. "But I think that's how you know they were truly significant. They leave an imprint that time doesn't erase." Jasmine met his gaze, her eyes soft with emotion. "And now here we are, given a second chance by a twist of fate and an entitled passenger." Elijah laughed at that. "We should send her a thank you card." "I don't think she'd appreciate it," Jasmine replied with a chuckle. "But you're right. In a weird way, we do owe her a debt of gratitude." Their conversation continued to flow easily, moving from reflections on the past to more immediate concerns, their current lives, their routines, their friends. Elijah described his apartment with its partial view of the bay, his irregular schedule that saw him in a different city every few days. Jasmine talked about her work at the law firm, her small but comfortable apartment in Oakland, her close-knit group of friends who had become like family. "Do you still play the piano?" Elijah asked suddenly, remembering how music had been Jasmine's escape during their college days, a way to decompress from the pressures of her pre-law studies. Jasmine's face lit up at the question. "I do, actually. I have an upright in my apartment. Nothing fancy, but it's good enough for me to keep my skills up. I'm surprised you remember that." "Of course I remember," Elijah said softly. "I remember listening to you play when you thought no one was around. You'd lose yourself in the music in a way that was beautiful to witness." Jasmine felt a blush warming her cheeks at his words. "What about you? Still into stargazing?" "Whenever I can," Elijah confirmed. "It's harder now, living in the city with all the light pollution. But I take my telescope up to Mount Tamalpais sometimes on my days off. The view of the stars from up there is incredible." "I'd like to see that sometime," Jasmine said, then immediately worried she was being too forward, assuming a future that might not materialize. But Elijah's expression brightened at her words. "I'd love to show you. The next clear night when I'm off duty, maybe we could make the trip. It's about an hour's drive from the city." "I'd like that," Jasmine replied, relieved and pleased by his enthusiasm. As their coffee date extended into its second hour, neither seemed in any hurry to end the reunion. The baristas changed shifts, the afternoon crowd thinned out and was replaced by the after-work rush. But Jasmine and Elijah remained at their table, lost in conversation and rediscovery. It was only when Elijah's phone buzzed with a reminder about their dinner reservation that they realized how much time had passed. "I can't believe we've been here for almost 3 hours," Jasmine said, checking her own phone in surprise. "Time flies when you're in good company," Elijah replied with a smile. "But if we're still on for dinner, we should probably head out. I made a reservation at Bella Notte for 7 now." "Definitely still on for dinner," Jasmine confirmed. "Should I go back to Oakland to change or—" "You look perfect as you are," Elijah assured her. "But if you'd like to freshen up, you're welcome to use my place. It's just a few blocks from here." Jasmine considered the offer. There was an intimacy to visiting Elijah's home that felt significant, a step beyond their coffee date into something more personal. But she also felt completely comfortable with him, as if the years apart had somehow dissolved now that they were together again. "That would be great, actually," she decided, "if you're sure you don't mind." "Not at all," Elijah said, standing and offering his hand to help her up. "It's nothing fancy, but it's home." Jasmine took his hand, feeling a small thrill at the contact that reminded her of their college days when every touch had seemed charged with significance. Some things, it seemed, hadn't changed at all. They left the cafe together, stepping out into the late afternoon sunshine of Union Square. The area was bustling with shoppers, tourists, and locals making their way home from work. Elijah led the way, keeping Jasmine's hand in his as they navigated through the crowd. "My place is on Powell Street," he explained as they walked. "Just far enough from the main tourist areas to be relatively quiet, but close enough to everything that I can walk most places when I'm home." "How often are you home?" Jasmine asked, curious about the reality of his pilot's schedule. "It varies," Elijah admitted. "I typically fly 4 days on, 3 days off, but it's not always consistent. Sometimes I get longer stretches at home, sometimes shorter. The airline tries to be fair about rotating the less desirable routes and schedules." "That must make it hard to maintain any kind of routine," Jasmine observed. "It does," he agreed. "It's one of the challenges of the job. But I've gotten used to it over the years. And there are perks to balance it out. I get to see new places, meet interesting people, and occasionally reunite with old flames," Jasmine added with a teasing smile. "That's definitely a perk I wasn't expecting," Elijah laughed, squeezing her hand gently. They reached his building, a well-maintained apartment complex with a modern facade. Elijah greeted the doorman by name as they entered the lobby, and they took the elevator to the 8th floor. "Here we are," Elijah said as he unlocked his door. "Home sweet home, at least when I'm not in a hotel somewhere." Jasmine stepped into the apartment, immediately struck by how much it reflected the Elijah she remembered. The space was tidy but lived in, with large windows that allowed in plenty of natural light. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with a mix of aviation manuals, science fiction novels, and books on astronomy, his longtime passion. A telescope stood by the balcony door, and framed photographs of stunning celestial scenes decorated the walls. "You took these?" Jasmine asked, moving closer to examine one of the photographs, a breathtaking image of the Milky Way arcing over what appeared to be a desert landscape. "I did," Elijah confirmed, pleased by her interest. "That one was taken in Joshua Tree National Park during a rare night off in Southern California. The conditions were perfect. Clear skies, new moon, minimal light pollution." "It's beautiful," Jasmine said sincerely. "You always had an eye for capturing the stars." "I had a good teacher," Elijah replied, coming to stand beside her. "Remember Professor Jenkins and his astrophotography seminar? How could I forget? You dragged me to every session even though I wasn't officially enrolled. And you ended up enjoying it just as much as I did," Elijah reminded her with a grin. "I did," Jasmine acknowledged. "You had a way of making me see the beauty in things I might have otherwise overlooked." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the years between them seemed to vanish entirely. They were just Eli and Jazz again, 2 college students who had found in each other a perfect complement, a balance of practicality and dreams, earth and sky. The moment was broken by Jasmine's phone buzzing with an incoming text. She glanced at it and saw Maya's name on the screen, along with a simple message. "Update?" "Someone's eager for news," Jasmine said with a laugh, showing Elijah the text. "Your friend from the flight?" Elijah asked, remembering the woman who had been sitting near Jasmine. "Yes, Maya. We exchanged numbers before we parted ways. She's very invested in our reunion story." "Well, we should give her something good to report then," Elijah said with a mischievous glint in his eyes. Before Jasmine could ask what he meant, he stepped closer, one hand gently cupping her face. "May I?" he asked softly. Jasmine's heart raced as she nodded, her eyes never leaving his. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away if she wanted to, Elijah leaned in and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that was both familiar and entirely new. It was gentle at first, tentative, but as Jasmine responded, sliding her arms around his neck, the kiss deepened, becoming a reaffirmation of the connection they had once shared and a promise of what might still be possible. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Elijah rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you on the plane," he admitted. "I'm glad you waited until we were alone," Jasmine replied with a soft laugh, though it might have really given Amber something to complain about. Elijah laughed at that, the sound warm and genuine. "Can you imagine? Excuse me, but the captain is making out with the passenger who refused to move for my family. This is completely unprofessional." Jasmine joined in his laughter, the tension of the moment dissolving into comfortable humor. She would have had a point, to be fair. "True," Elijah conceded, "but now I'm off duty, and you're not my passenger anymore. Just Jasmine, the woman I never quite got over." The simple honesty of his statement caught Jasmine by surprise, touching her deeply. "And you're just Elijah, the man I've measured everyone else against without even realizing it." He kissed her again, more briefly this time, but with no less feeling. "We should probably get ready for dinner," he said reluctantly. "The bathroom's through there if you want to freshen up." Jasmine nodded, suddenly aware of the time. "Right, dinner. I almost forgot." As she made her way to the bathroom, Jasmine couldn't help but reflect on the extraordinary turn her life had taken in just over 24 hours. From a routine business trip to a chance reunion with the man she had once thought might be the love of her life, a man who, if his words and actions were any indication, might still hold that title. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror, noting the flush in her cheeks, the brightness in her eyes that spoke of renewed hope and happiness. Whatever happened next, she was grateful for this unexpected second chance, this opportunity to see where their reconnection might lead. When she emerged from the bathroom, Elijah was waiting by the door, keys in hand and a warm smile on his face. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," Jasmine confirmed, taking his outstretched hand. Together, they left the apartment and headed toward the restaurant, both aware that they were embarking on something new yet wonderfully familiar, a journey they had started years ago but had been temporarily sidetracked by circumstances and youth. This time, they silently promised each other they would give their relationship the chance it deserved, unhindered by distance or doubt. Whether it would lead to a future together remained to be seen, but for now, walking hand in hand through the streets of San Francisco, both Jasmine and Elijah felt a sense of rightness, of coming home after a long journey apart. Across town, Maya sat in Sophia's apartment, staring at her phone and waiting for a response from Jasmine. "She's left me on red," she informed Sophia with mock indignation. "Do you think that's a good sign or a bad sign?" "Definitely good," Sophia assured her, refilling their wine glasses. "She's probably too busy reconnecting with Captain Charming to check her messages." "You're probably right," Maya agreed, setting her phone aside. "I'll give her space, but I'm definitely going to want all the details tomorrow." "Of course," Sophia said with a grin. "This is better than any rom-com I've seen in ages. Girl meets boy in college, they fall in love, circumstances tear them apart, fate brings them back together years later in the most dramatic way possible. It's perfect." Maya laughed at her friend's enthusiasm. "When you put it that way, it does sound like something straight out of a movie." "Life imitates art," Sophia declared, raising her wine glass in a toast. To Jasmine and her pilot, may they get the happy ending they deserve. To Jasmine and Elijah, Maya echoed, clinking her glass against Sophia's. And to unexpected reunions that remind us that sometimes the right person at the wrong time can become the right person at the right time if we're lucky enough to get a second chance. It was a sentiment that Jasmine and Elijah would have wholeheartedly agreed with as they settled into their table at Bella Notte, ready to continue rediscovering each other over candlelight and good food, the past informing but not defining their potential future together. Bella Notte lived up to its reputation as one of San Francisco's most romantic Italian restaurants. Nestled on a quiet street away from the tourist crowds, it offered an intimate atmosphere with soft lighting, white tablecloths, and the gentle strains of classical music playing in the background. The walls were adorned with murals depicting scenes from the Italian countryside, and the air was filled with the enticing aromas of garlic, basil, and freshly baked bread. Elijah and Jasmine were seated at a corner table that offered a degree of privacy while still allowing them to observe the rest of the restaurant. A small candle flickered between them, casting a warm glow that softened their features and created an atmosphere of intimacy. "This place is lovely," Jasmine commented as she took in her surroundings. "How did you find it?" "One of the flight attendants I work with regularly, Maria, recommended it," Elijah explained. "Her family is from Sicily, and she said this is the only place in San Francisco that makes authentic arancini like her grandmother's." "High praise indeed," Jasmine said with a smile. "I take it you've been here before?" "A few times," Elijah admitted, "but never with anyone special." The simple statement hung in the air between them, a quiet acknowledgement of the significance of their reunion. Jasmine felt a pleasant warmth spread through her at his words, at the implication that she was someone special to him even after all these years. Their waiter approached with menus and a wine list, giving them a brief respite from the intensity of the moment. After ordering a bottle of Chianti that the waiter recommended, they turned their attention to the food options. "Everything looks amazing," Jasmine said, scanning the menu. "What do you recommend?" "The osso buco is exceptional," Elijah suggested, "and Maria swears by the risotto ai funghi." When the waiter returned with their wine, they placed their orders: osso buco for Elijah, risotto for Jasmine, and arancini to share as an appetizer. As they settled into their meal, the conversation flowed as easily as the wine, moving from light-hearted reminiscences about their college days to more serious discussions about their careers and aspirations. "Do you ever regret it?" Jasmine asked as they shared the arancini, golden brown rice balls filled with ragu and mozzarella. "Choosing aviation over business?" Elijah considered the question thoughtfully. "No," he said finally. "Business was my father's dream for me, not mine. Flying was always what I wanted, ever since I was a kid watching planes take off at the airport. It just took me a while to find the courage to pursue it." "I remember your father wasn't exactly thrilled when you switched majors," Jasmine recalled. "That's putting it mildly," Elijah said with a wry smile. "He didn't speak to me for months, but he came around eventually, especially once he saw how happy I was. And now he brags to all his friends about his son, the airline captain." "Parents can surprise you," Jasmine observed. "My mother was convinced law school would turn me into a heartless corporate drone. Now she tells everyone how proud she is of her daughter, the attorney." "How is your mom?" Elijah asked, remembering the warm, energetic woman who had welcomed him into their home during college breaks when he couldn't return to his own family across the country. "She's good," Jasmine replied with a fond smile. "Still teaching kindergarten, still making the best sweet potato pie in Oakland, still trying to set me up with nice young men from her church." "I'm guessing those setups haven't been too successful?" Elijah asked, a hint of hope in his voice. Jasmine laughed softly. "Let's just say her taste in men and mine don't always align. Besides, I've been focused on my career for so long, dating has been a secondary concern." "I know what you mean," Elijah agreed. My lifestyle doesn't exactly make it easy to maintain a relationship. The irregular hours, the constant travel. It takes a special kind of person to understand and accept that. Is that why your engagement ended? Jasmine asked carefully, not wanting to pry but curious about this significant chapter in his life. Elijah nodded, taking a sip of his wine before answering. Partly. Christine wanted a more traditional life, regular hours, weekends together, the whole suburban dream, and I couldn't give her that, not without giving up a career I love. That must have been difficult, Jasmine said sympathetically. It was, Elijah acknowledged. But in the end, we both realized we were trying to force each other into molds that didn't fit. She deserved someone who wanted the same thing she did, and I needed someone who understood that my career isn't just what I do, it's a part of who I am. Someone who shares your passion for the sky, Jasmine suggested, understanding exactly what he meant. Yes, Elijah agreed, his eyes meeting hers across the table. Someone who gets it, who has their own passions and dreams that are just as important to them. Someone like me? Jasmine asked boldly, the wine perhaps making her more direct than she might otherwise have been. Elijah's smile was warm and genuine. Yes, Jess. Someone exactly like you. The waiter arrived with their main courses, providing a momentary interruption to their increasingly intimate conversation. The food was as exceptional as promised. Elijah's osso buco tender and flavorful, Jasmine's risotto creamy and rich with the earthy taste of wild mushrooms. This is incredible, Jasmine said after her first bite. I can see why Maria's family approves. Wait until you try the tiramisu, Elijah replied. It might actually be better than the one we had at that little cafe in Georgetown, remember? Durante's, Jasmine recalled immediately. We went there after finals sophomore year to celebrate. You spilled espresso on your favorite shirt. And you tried to help me clean it up, but just ended up getting mascarpone on your sleeve, Elijah added, laughing at the memory. We were a mess, Jasmine said with a nostalgic smile. But a happy mess. The best kind, Elijah agreed softly. As they continued their meal, sharing bites of each other's dishes and trading memories, both felt the years between them melting away. The comfortable familiarity they had once shared was returning, enhanced now by the maturity and life experience they had gained during their time apart. By the time dessert arrived, tiramisu for Jasmine, panna cotta for Elijah, the conversation had turned to the future, specifically what might come next for them. So, Elijah began, setting down his spoon and meeting Jasmine's gaze directly. I know we've only just reconnected, and I don't want to rush anything or put pressure on you, but I can't help feeling that us meeting again after all these years, it feels significant, like we've been given a second chance. I feel it too, Jasmine admitted, her voice soft but certain. When I saw you yesterday, it was like something clicked back into place, something I didn't even realize was missing until it was there again. So, where do we go from here? Elijah asked. I'm based in San Francisco. You're in Oakland. We're both established in our careers, both with busy lives. But I want to see where this could go, if you're willing. Jasmine considered his words, the practical part of her brain, the part that had served her well as an attorney, assessing the logistics and potential challenges. But her heart, which had recognized Elijah the moment she saw him on the plane, already knew her answer. I'm willing, she said simply. It won't always be easy, I know that. Your schedule is unpredictable, mine can be demanding during big cases. But I think what we have, what we could have again, is worth the effort. The relief and joy that spread across Elijah's face was beautiful to witness. That's how I feel too, he said, reaching across the table to take her hand. We're not those kids anymore trying to figure out who we are and what we want. We know now, and maybe that's why this feels so right, so possible. A second chance at the right time. Jasmine agreed, squeezing his hand. Exactly, Elijah said, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her skin. So, does this mean you'll see me again, when I get back from my Tokyo route next week? I'd like that, Jasmine replied with a smile. And in the meantime, there's always texting and phone calls. Just like the old days, Elijah said with a grin, except instead of calling from a payphone in the dorm lobby, I'll be calling from 35,000 feet over the Pacific. Technology has its advantages, Jasmine laughed. The evening continued with a similar blend of reminiscence and forward-looking conversation, both of them aware that they were laying the groundwork for something new while honoring what they had once shared. After dinner, they decided to take a walk along the Embarcadero, enjoying the cool evening air and the sparkling lights of the Bay Bridge. They strolled hand in hand, stopping occasionally to look out over the water or to share a quiet moment together. I wish I could show you the stars tonight, Elijah said as they paused near a railing, the lights of Treasure Island visible across the bay. But the city lights make it impossible to see much. We'll save that for Mount Tamalpais, Jasmine replied, leaning against him slightly. When you get back from Tokyo. It's a date, Elijah confirmed, slipping an arm around her waist. They stood in comfortable silence for a few moments, each lost in their own thoughts, yet profoundly aware of the other's presence. I should probably head back to Oakland soon, Jasmine said reluctantly, checking her watch. I have an early meeting tomorrow. I'll get you a cab, Elijah offered, though he made no immediate move to release her from his embrace. Or, Jasmine began, then hesitated, considering her next words carefully. Or I could stay. Just to sleep, she clarified quickly. I have a change of clothes in my carry-on that I never unpacked, and your place is closer to the BART station for my morning commute anyway. Elijah looked at her with a mixture of surprise and happiness. I'd like that, he said softly. Just to be clear, I'm not expecting anything. Just being with you, having you near, that's enough for me right now. For me, too, Jasmine assured him. We have time to figure out the rest. With that settled, they made their way back to Elijah's apartment, the night air crisp around them and the city lights guiding their path. The walk was quiet, each of them processing the significant turn their lives had taken in the span of just over 24 hours. When they reached Elijah's building, there was a moment of slight awkwardness as they entered the apartment, a sudden awareness of the intimacy of the situation. But it passed quickly as they fell into the comfortable routine of two people who had once shared much more than just space. Elijah found an unused toothbrush for Jasmine and showed her where the towels were kept. She retrieved her change of clothes from her carry-on, grateful for her habit of packing an extra outfit in case of travel delays or lost luggage. As they prepared for bed, moving around each other with a familiarity that belied their years apart, Jasmine felt a profound sense of rightness, of coming home to something she had missed without fully realizing it. When they finally settled into Elijah's bed, there was a brief moment of adjustment as they found a comfortable position. But then, as if guided by muscle memory from years ago, Jasmine turned onto her side, and Elijah curved his body around hers, his arm draped protectively over her waist. "This feels familiar," Jasmine murmured, the events of the day catching up with her as fatigue began to set in. "In the best way," Elijah agreed, his breath warm against her neck. "Good night, Eli," she whispered, her eyes already closing. "Good night, Jas," he replied softly. "Sweet dreams." As they drifted off to sleep, both felt a sense of peace that had eluded them for years. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever adjustments they would need to make to accommodate their individual lives into a shared future, they would face them together. The connection they had rediscovered was too precious, too rare to let slip away again. And it had all started with a confrontation on a plane, a blonde woman demanding a seat, and a pilot who recognized the passenger she was trying to displace. Sometimes they both reflected as sleep claimed them. The most unexpected beginnings led to the most beautiful outcomes. In the quiet of the night, in the safety of each other's arms, Jasmine and Elijah slept more soundly than either had in years, their breathing synchronizing in the same rhythm it had followed long ago in a college dorm room where they had first discovered the comfort of sharing sleep. Morning came too soon, sunlight filtering through the blinds and the sounds of the city beginning to stir outside. Jasmine woke first, momentarily disoriented before remembering where she was and who was sleeping beside her. She turned carefully to look at Elijah, his features relaxed in sleep, his arms still draped protectively around her. She allowed herself a moment to simply look at him, to marvel at the twist of fate that had brought them back together. In the light of day, the events of the past 36 hours seemed almost dreamlike in their serendipity. But Elijah's solid presence beside her was undeniably real, a tangible reminder that sometimes life offered second chances when you least expected them. Reluctant to wake him but aware of her morning meeting, Jasmine gently extracted herself from his embrace and slipped out of bed. She gathered her things and headed to the bathroom to prepare for the day, moving quietly to avoid disturbing Elijah's sleep. By the time she emerged, dressed in her fresh clothes and with her hair and makeup done, Elijah was awake and in the kitchen, the scent of freshly brewed coffee filling the apartment. "Morning," he greeted her with a sleepy smile, his hair slightly tousled and his voice still rough with sleep. "Coffee?" "Please," Jasmine replied, returning his smile as she approached the kitchen counter. "You didn't have to get up." "I wanted to see you off properly," Elijah said, pouring coffee into a mug and adding a splash of cream, exactly how she had always taken it. "Some things you don't forget." Jasmine accepted the mug gratefully, touched by the simple gesture and the memory it evoked. "Thank you for the coffee and for everything else." "Thank you for staying," Elijah replied, his eyes meeting hers over the rim of his own mug. "I slept better than I have in years." "Me too," Jasmine admitted softly. They shared a quiet moment, sipping their coffee and adjusting to this new reality where they were once again a part of each other's lives. "What time is your meeting?" Elijah asked, glancing at the clock on the microwave. 9:30, Jasmine replied, checking her watch. "I should leave in about 20 minutes to make it on time." "Just enough time to finish our coffee," Elijah observed with a smile, "and to talk about when I'll see you again." "When do you leave for Tokyo?" Jasmine asked, leaning against the counter. "Tomorrow morning," Elijah said with a hint of regret. "I'll be gone for 4 days, 2 days of flying, 2 days of mandatory rest in Tokyo." "And when you get back?" "I land late Sunday night and then I'm off for 3 days," he explained. "So Monday, if you're free?" "Monday is perfect," Jasmine confirmed. "I don't have any court appearances scheduled and I can move my afternoon meetings if needed." "It's a date then," Elijah said, his face brightening. "I was thinking about that trip to Mount Tamalpais if the weather's good. We could pack a picnic, watch the sunset, and then stay for the stars." "That sounds wonderful," Jasmine replied, already looking forward to it. "It's been too long since I've seen a proper night sky." They continued making plans as they finished their coffee, exchanging phone numbers and email addresses, modern replacements for the handwritten notes and dorm phone numbers they had once shared. It felt both new and familiar, the logistics of maintaining a connection updated for their adult lives, but the underlying desire to stay connected unchanged from their college days. As the time for Jasmine's departure approached, a sense of reluctance settled over both of them. Despite the practical necessity of parting, neither was quite ready for their reunion to end. "I'll text you when I land in Tokyo," Elijah promised as they stood at his door, Jasmine's bag in hand and her jacket draped over her arm. "I'd like that," she replied. "And maybe a picture of the view from your hotel room? I've never been to Tokyo." "We should fix that sometime," Elijah suggested. "Airline employees get pretty good travel benefits, and I can bring a companion for just the cost of taxes and fees." "Are you asking me to be your travel companion, Captain Davis?" Jasmine teased, though the idea of exploring the world with Elijah held genuine appeal. "I might be," he replied with a grin. "Think about it. The world's a big place and I'd love to see more of it with you." "I'll consider the offer," Jasmine said, her tone light, but her eyes conveying her sincere interest. Elijah stepped closer, his hands coming to rest lightly on her waist. "Before you go," he said softly, "may I kiss you goodbye?" In answer, Jasmine rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his, a kiss that was both a farewell and a promise of more to come. It was gentler than their kiss the previous day, less urgent, but no less meaningful. When they parted, Elijah tucked a strand of hair behind Jasmine's ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "Have a good day at work," he said. "I'll be thinking of you." "Safe travels tomorrow," Jasmine replied. "Text me when you can." With a final kiss, lighter and quicker than the last, Jasmine stepped out of the apartment and into the hallway. As the door closed behind her, she felt a curious mixture of emotions, the sadness of parting tempered by the excitement of a new beginning, the weight of their shared history balanced by the promise of a shared future. The BART ride to Oakland gave Jasmine time to reflect on the whirlwind of the past 2 days. From the confrontation on the plane to spending the night in Elijah's arms, it had been a journey of unexpected reconnection and renewed possibilities. The practical part of her brain, the part that had served her well in law school and her career, tried to caution her about moving too quickly, about letting emotions override reason. But her heart, which had recognized Elijah the moment she saw him again, knew that some connections transcended conventional timelines and rational considerations. As she exited the BART station and walked the few blocks to her law firm, Jasmine's phone buzzed with an incoming text. She smiled when she saw Maya's name on the screen. "Still waiting for that update. Coffee date details, please." Jasmine paused outside her office building, considering how to respond. There was so much to tell, so many significant developments since her coffee with Elijah had turned into dinner, a walk along the Embarcadero, and a night spent in his apartment. Coffee turned into dinner, which turned into breakfast, she typed, deciding to keep it brief but honest. "Reconnecting with him feels right in a way I can't quite explain. We'll call you later with more details." Maya's response was immediate and enthusiastic. "OMG! I need these details. Call me the second you're free. And I'm so happy for you. I could tell there was still something there the moment he stepped out of that cockpit." With a smile, Jasmine tucked her phone away and entered her office building, ready to face her workday despite the scant hours of sleep. She felt energized in a way that had nothing to do with the coffee she had shared with Elijah and everything to do with the sense of possibility that their reunion had awakened in her. Meanwhile, across the bay, Elijah was preparing for his Tokyo flight, reviewing weather patterns and flight plans with a focus that belied the emotional upheaval of the past 2 days. But even as he attended to his professional responsibilities, his thoughts kept returning to Jasmine. Her smile, her laugh, the feeling of her in his arms as they slept. He had never expected to see her again, had resigned himself to the memory of their relationship as a beautiful chapter in his life that had ended due to circumstances beyond their control. And yet, through a series of unlikely events beginning with an entitled passenger's demand, they had found each other again. It felt like more than coincidence, more than mere chance. It felt, though Elijah was reluctant to ascribe too much significance to it, like destiny. As he packed his flight bag for the Tokyo trip, Elijah's phone rang. Seeing his mother's name on the screen, he answered with a smile. "Hey, Mom," he greeted her warmly. "Elijah, sweetheart." His mother's voice came through clear and affectionate. "I was just checking to see if you're still coming for dinner next weekend. Your father's planning to grill those salmon steaks you like." "Wouldn't miss it," Elijah assured her. "Though I might bring someone with me if that's okay." There was a pause on the other end of the line, then his mother's curious voice. "Someone? As in, a date someone?" "Yes," Elijah confirmed, unable to keep the smile from his voice. "Someone special." "Well, now I'm intrigued," his mother said, her tone warming with interest. Anyone I know? Elijah hesitated, then decided to share the full story. Actually, yes. Do you remember Jasmine Taylor from college? I brought her home for Thanksgiving one year. Jasmine? His mother's surprise was evident. Of course I remember her. Such a lovely girl. I was heartbroken when you two split up, but I thought she was in… where was it? Washington? She moved to Oakland, Elijah explained. She's a corporate attorney now, and we ran into each other yesterday on my flight from Atlanta. On your flight? His mother's voice rose with excitement. Elijah Davis, are you telling me you reconnected with Jasmine after all these years because she was a passenger on your plane? That's the most romantic thing I've ever heard. Elijah laughed at his mother's enthusiasm. It's a bit more complicated than that, but essentially, yes. And we've spent some time together since then, talking and, well, realizing that maybe the timing is finally right for us. Oh, Elijah, his mother said, her voice softening. I'm so happy for you. Jasmine was always special, anyone could see that. And the way you looked at her, I always hoped you might find your way back to each other someday. Thanks, Mom, Elijah said, touched by her support and her memory of his relationship with Jasmine. It's early days yet, but it feels right. It feels like coming home. That's how it should feel, his mother assured him. And of course you must bring her to dinner. Your father will be thrilled. He always liked her, you know. Said she had moxie. Elijah laughed again, remembering his father's old-fashioned compliment. That she does. I'll ask her about dinner when I get back from Tokyo. After finishing the call with his mother, Elijah completed his preparations for the next day's flight with a renewed sense of purpose. The Tokyo route was one he had flown many times before, a familiar journey across the Pacific. But this time, he would carry with him the knowledge that someone special was waiting for his return, a thought that filled him with a happiness he hadn't experienced in years. The day passed quickly for both Jasmine and Elijah, each absorbed in their respective professional responsibilities yet carrying the warmth of their reunion into their separate worlds. By evening, Jasmine was back in her Oakland apartment, catching up on the housekeeping and errands she had neglected during her Atlanta trip. But her thoughts were never far from Elijah, from the unexpected turn her life had taken in just 48 hours. As she prepared a simple dinner for herself, her phone rang with Maya's name on the display. With a smile, Jasmine answered, ready for the interrogation she knew was coming. Finally, Maya exclaimed without preamble. I've been dying for details all day. Spill everything. Jasmine laughed, settling onto her couch with her phone. Where do I even start? How about with what coffee turned into dinner, which turned into breakfast means exactly, Maya suggested, her voice teasing but warm. It means exactly what it sounds like, Jasmine replied. We had coffee at this cute place in Union Square, and it was going so well that he invited me to dinner. And then after dinner, we walked along the Embarcadero, and I ended up staying at his place. Jasmine Taylor, Maya gasped with delighted shock. You little minx. It wasn't like that, Jasmine clarified quickly. We just slept. Actually slept. It was nice, comfortable, like no time had passed at all. That's even more romantic, Maya declared. So, what happens now? Are you officially back together? Is this a long-distance thing or what? We're taking it one day at a time, Jasmine explained. He leaves for Tokyo tomorrow, but when he gets back on Sunday, we're going to spend Monday together. He wants to take me up to Mount Tamalpais to see the stars. The stars, Maya repeated dreamily. That's so perfect I can't even stand it. You know this is basically a movie, right? The long-lost lovers reunited by fate, the dramatic confrontation that brings them together again, the pilot and the lawyer finding their way back to each other after years apart. When you put it that way, it does sound rather cinematic, Jasmine acknowledged with a laugh. But real life is messier than movies. We still have a lot to figure out. Our schedules, our living situations, our expectations. We're not the same people we were in college. But the core of who you are, what drew you together in the first place, That hasn't changed, has it? Maya asked perceptively. Jasmine considered the question. No, she admitted softly. That's still there. If anything, it's stronger now, more grounded in who we've become. Then the rest is just logistics, Maya said confidently. And if anyone can figure out logistics, it's a corporate attorney and an airline captain. Jasmine laughed again, grateful for Maya's optimistic perspective. I suppose you're right. Anyway, enough about me. How's your conference preparation going? They chatted for a while longer about Maya's upcoming presentation and her plans for her stay in San Francisco. Before they hung up, Maya extracted a promise from Jasmine to keep her updated on developments with Elijah, particularly their Mount Tamalpais date the following week. I'm investing in this love story now, Maya declared. I need regular updates. It's like my personal romance novel unfolding in real time. I'll keep you posted, Jasmine promised, amused by Maya's enthusiasm, but also touched by her genuine happiness for a woman she had only just met. After ending the call, Jasmine finished her dinner and settled in with some work she had brought home, reviewing contracts for an upcoming negotiation. But her concentration was interrupted by a text from Elijah. All packed for Tokyo. Wish you were coming with me? Rain check for another time? Smiling, she replied, Definitely. I've always wanted to see Japan. Safe travels tomorrow. His response came quickly. I'll bring you back something special. Sweet dreams, Jazz. You too, Eli, she typed, feeling a warmth spread through her at the simple exchange. As she prepared for bed later that night, Jasmine found herself reflecting on the extraordinary turn her life had taken. 2 days ago, she had been a single professional woman focused primarily on her career, with occasional forays into dating that never quite lived up to her expectations. Now she was reconnected with the man she had once thought might be the love of her life, contemplating a future that included him in ways she had long since stopped imagining. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure, a leap of faith that felt both reckless and absolutely right. Whatever came next, Jasmine knew that the connection she and Elijah had rediscovered was worth exploring, worth fighting for. As she drifted off to sleep, her last conscious thought was of Elijah's arms around her the previous night, the comfort and rightness of his presence, and the promise of seeing him again when he returned from Tokyo. It was this thought that carried her into dreams filled with stars and open skies, with the freedom of flight and the security of coming home. The next few days passed in a flurry of activity for both Jasmine and Elijah. While he flew across the Pacific to Tokyo, navigating time zones and the rigorous responsibilities of international flight, Jasmine immersed herself in her legal work, preparing for an important client meeting and finalizing the details of a complex intellectual property agreement. Despite the distance and their busy schedules, they maintained a connection through texts and occasional calls when Elijah's schedule allowed. He sent her photos as promised. The Tokyo skyline at night from his hotel room, the organized chaos of Shibuya Crossing, a peaceful temple garden he had discovered during a morning walk. Each image came with a brief message, a thought he wanted to share with her across the miles that separated them. Wish you could see this in person, he texted with a particularly stunning view of Mount Fuji visible from a park he had visited. Next time you will. The promise of next time warmed Jasmine each time she read it, a tangible indication that what they were building was not just about reconnecting with their past, but creating a future together, one that included shared experiences and new memories. For her part, Jasmine sent Elijah updates from her life in Oakland, a funny incident at the office involving a partner and a malfunctioning coffee machine, a sunset view from her apartment window, a recommendation for a book she had just finished that she thought he might enjoy. Small glimpses into her daily existence that kept him connected to her world even as he moved through his own thousands of miles away. By the time Sunday arrived, marking Elijah's return to San Francisco, both felt as if their connection had deepened despite the physical separation. The texts and calls had created a bridge across the distance, allowing them to continue discovering each other in their adult lives. Jasmine received a text from Elijah late Sunday night. "Just landed. Home safe. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. I've missed you." "Missed you too," she replied, a smile spreading across her face as she sat in bed with her laptop, finalizing some work before the new week began. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be here before you know it." "Dream of stars," he texted back, a reference to their planned trip to Mount Tamalpais. "Always," she responded, remembering the nights in college when they would lie on the campus lawn, looking up at the sky while Elijah pointed out constellations and shared his dreams of flight. The next morning dawned clear and bright, promising perfect weather for their stargazing expedition. Jasmine dressed with care, choosing comfortable clothes suitable for an outdoor adventure while still looking nice for their reunion. Jeans, a soft sweater in a deep blue that brought out her eyes, and sturdy but attractive boots. She packed a small overnight bag as well, following Elijah's suggestion that they might want to stay at a small inn near Mount Tamalpais rather than driving back to the city late at night. At precisely noon, her phone buzzed with a text from Elijah. "Outside your office whenever you're ready. No rush." Jasmine felt a flutter of anticipation as she gathered her things and informed her assistant that she would be out for the remainder of the day. She took the elevator down to the lobby of her office building and stepped outside into the Oakland sunshine. Elijah was leaning against a sleek, dark blue SUV parked at the curb, wearing jeans and a light jacket, his aviator sunglasses giving him a look that was equal parts casual and unmistakably pilot. When he saw her, his face broke into a wide smile that made Jasmine's heart skip a beat. "Hey you," he said warmly, pushing off from the car to meet her halfway. "Hey yourself," she replied, suddenly shy despite the days of communication that had passed between them. Elijah seemed to sense her momentary hesitation and simply opened his arms, inviting her in for a hug without presuming. Jasmine stepped into his embrace willingly, the familiar scent of his cologne and the solid warmth of his body instantly comforting. They held each other for a long moment, re-establishing the physical connection that texts and calls couldn't provide. "I missed you," Elijah murmured against her hair, echoing his text from the previous night but adding the depth of his voice, the tangible evidence of his presence. "I missed you too," Jasmine replied, her words muffled against his shoulder. "How was Tokyo?" "Beautiful," he said as they reluctantly separated, "but better shared. Next time you're coming with me." "Is that so?" Jasmine teased, though the idea filled her with pleasant anticipation. "Definitely," Elijah confirmed, opening the passenger door of the SUV for her. "I've already started a mental list of places I want to show you." As Jasmine settled into the comfortable seat, she noticed a small package on the dashboard, wrapped in elegant paper with a pattern of cherry blossoms. "What's this?" she asked as Elijah got into the driver's seat. "A little something from Tokyo," he replied with a smile, handing her the package. "Go ahead, open it." Jasmine carefully unwrapped the gift, revealing a beautiful wooden box with intricate inlay work. Inside, nestled on a bed of silk, was a delicate silver pendant shaped like a star, with a small blue stone at its center that caught the light with an inner fire. "Elijah, it's beautiful," she breathed, lifting the necklace from its box. "The stone is lapis lazuli," he explained. "The jeweler told me it represents the night sky. I thought it was appropriate given our plans for today." "It's perfect," Jasmine said sincerely, deeply touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "Would you help me put it on?" Elijah took the necklace from her hands and Jasmine turned, lifting her hair to give him access to her neck. His fingers were warm against her skin as he fastened the clasp, lingering for just a moment before he completed the task. "Beautiful," he said softly as she turned back to face him, his eyes taking in the way the pendant rested just below her collarbone, the blue stone complementing the color of her sweater. "Thank you," Jasmine said, her hand coming up to touch the star. "I love it." Elijah smiled, clearly pleased by her reaction. then started the car. "Ready for an adventure? With you?" "Always," Jasmine replied, settling back into her seat as he pulled away from the curb and headed toward the Bay Bridge that would take them from Oakland to San Francisco and then north toward Marin County and Mount Tamalpais. The drive was pleasant, filled with easy conversation and comfortable silences. They shared stories from their time apart, Elijah describing a particularly challenging landing at Narita Airport due to unexpected crosswinds, Jasmine recounting a tough negotiation she had successfully concluded with a rival firm. As they left the city behind and headed north across the Golden Gate Bridge, the urban landscape gave way to the natural beauty of Marin County. Rolling hills covered in golden grass and dotted with oak trees stretched on either side of the highway, with glimpses of the Pacific Ocean visible to the west. "I brought a picnic," Elijah mentioned as they approached the turnoff for Mount Tamalpais. "I figured we could have an early dinner at the summit before the sun sets, then stay for the stars." "That sounds perfect," Jasmine said, touched once again by his thoughtfulness and planning. "What's in this picnic of yours?" "A few of your favorites," Elijah replied with a smile. "At least what used to be your favorites. I hope your tastes haven't changed too much." "Try me," Jasmine challenged playfully. "Brie and apples, sourdough bread from that bakery in North Beach you used to love, strawberries, dark chocolate, and a bottle of that Pinot Noir you mentioned during dinner the other night." Jasmine laughed in delight. "My tastes haven't changed at all, it seems. That sounds amazing." "I also packed a thermos of hot chocolate for later," Elijah added. "It gets chilly up there after dark, even with blankets." "You've thought of everything," Jasmine observed, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun and everything to do with the man beside her. "I wanted today to be special," Elijah said simply. "A proper beginning for whatever comes next for us." The sincerity in his voice touched Jasmine deeply. This wasn't just a date or a casual outing, it was a statement, a declaration of intent. Elijah was signaling that he saw their reunion as the start of something significant, something worth investing in and nurturing. "It already is special," she assured him, reaching across to place her hand on his where it rested on the gear shift. "Just being with you makes it so." Elijah turned his hand to capture hers, giving it a gentle squeeze before returning his attention to the winding road that was taking them higher into the hills of Mount Tamalpais State Park. They reached the summit parking area in the late afternoon, with several hours of daylight still ahead of them. The view was spectacular. The Bay Area spread out below them, San Francisco's distinctive skyline visible in the distance, the Golden Gate Bridge spanning the entrance to the bay, and beyond that, the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean stretching to the horizon. "Worth the drive?" Elijah asked as they stood at a viewpoint, taking in the panorama before them. "Absolutely," Jasmine breathed, awed by the beauty surrounding them. "I can't believe I've lived in the Bay Area for years and never made it up here." "Most locals don't," Elijah said with a smile. "They drive past it every day and think someday but never get around to it. It took an out-of-towner like me to discover it." "Well, I'm glad you did," Jasmine replied, leaning slightly against him as a cool breeze swept across the summit. They found a perfect spot for their picnic, a relatively flat area with a natural rock formation that served as a backrest, offering both comfort and an unobstructed view of the sunset to come. Elijah spread out a blanket and began unpacking the picnic basket he had prepared, arranging the food and wine with a care that made Jasmine smile. "What?" he asked, noticing her expression. "Nothing," she said, shaking her head slightly. "It's just, you always did have an eye for detail. I remember how you used to arrange your study materials just so, everything in its place." "Some things don't change," Elijah acknowledged with a laugh. "Though the flight attendants I work with would tell you my attention to detail borders on obsessive sometimes." "It's one of the things I always admired about you," Jasmine said honestly. "The way you notice things, care about getting them right." Elijah looked pleased at her words, a slight color rising to his cheeks that had nothing to do with the late afternoon sun. "Wine?" he offered, changing the subject. They settled into their picnic, enjoying the food and wine as the sun began its descent toward the Pacific. The conversation flowed easily between them, touching on light topics and more serious ones with equal comfort. They discussed their careers, their families, their hopes for the future. Each revelation, each shared thought, seemed to strengthen the connection that had been renewed between them. As the sun neared the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold, pink, and purple, Elijah reached into the picnic basket one last time and pulled out a small velvet pouch. "I have one more thing for you," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice that caught Jasmine's attention. "Elijah, you've already given me so much," she protested gently, touching the star pendant at her throat. "The necklace, this perfect day." "This is different," he said, his expression serious now. "It's not just a gift, well, you'll see." He handed her the pouch, which was heavier than Jasmine had expected. Opening it carefully, she tipped the contents into her palm, a small brass object that she recognized immediately as an old-fashioned compass, its surface worn smooth by time and handling. "Your grandfather's compass," she said softly, looking up at Elijah with surprise. "The one he carried during his time as a navigator in World War II. "You remember," Elijah said, his voice filled with emotion. "Of course I remember," Jasmine replied. "You showed it to me the first time I visited your parents' house. You said it was your most prized possession, that it had guided your grandfather home from the war and inspired your love of flight." Elijah nodded, taking the compass gently from her palm and opening it to reveal the face with its cardinal directions and steadily pointing needle. "My grandfather gave this to me when I was 10 years old," he said. "He told me it would always help me find my way, no matter how lost I might feel." He looked up from the compass to meet Jasmine's eyes directly. "After we broke up, I felt lost for a long time. Even when I was flying, doing what I loved, there was something missing. I didn't realize what it was until I saw you again on that flight. It was you, Jas. You were my true north, and I had lost my way without you." Jasmine felt tears welling in her eyes at his words, at the raw emotion behind them. "Eli, I'm not asking for forever right now," he clarified quickly. "I know we're still finding our way back to each other, but I want you to have this, to keep it safe for me, to know that wherever I go, whatever skies I fly through, I'll always be looking for my way back to you." The tears spilled over now, running down Jasmine's cheeks as she was overwhelmed by the significance of his gesture. The compass wasn't just a gift, it was a promise, a declaration, a symbol of his commitment to the path they were beginning to walk together again. "I don't know what to say," she admitted, her voice choked with emotion. "Say you'll keep it," Elijah suggested softly. "Say you'll help me find my way." "Yes," Jasmine whispered, closing her hand around the compass. "Yes to all of it." Elijah pulled her into his arms then, holding her close as the sun finally dipped below the horizon, its last rays painting the sky in a breathtaking display of color. They remained that way for a long moment, content in each other's embrace, the compass pressed between them like a promise, a tangible symbol of the journey they were undertaking together. As twilight deepened around them, the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Elijah reluctantly released Jasmine, but only to reach for the thermos of hot chocolate he had promised earlier. He poured the steaming liquid into 2 insulated cups and handed one to Jasmine, who accepted it gratefully as the evening chill began to settle around them. Elijah then retrieved a second, heavier blanket from his pack and draped it around both their shoulders, drawing Jasmine close to his side. "Now," he said, his voice soft in the gathering darkness, "let me show you the stars." As the last traces of daylight faded from the sky, the stars emerged in their full glory, far more numerous and brilliant than could ever be seen from the light-polluted cities below. The Milky Way stretched across the heavens like a ribbon of diamonds scattered on black velvet, its brilliance almost startling in its clarity. "Oh, Eli," Jasmine breathed, her head tilted back to take in the spectacular view. "It's incredible." "Worth the drive?" he asked, echoing his earlier question. "Worth everything," she replied sincerely. Elijah pointed out constellations as they appeared, his knowledge of the night sky as comprehensive as Jasmine remembered from their college days. He showed her Orion with its distinctive belt, Cassiopeia in her chair, the seven sisters of the Pleiades. Each grouping of stars came with a story, a piece of mythology or astronomical fact that Elijah shared with the same enthusiasm he had displayed years ago on the campus lawn at Howard. "You still remember all of them," Jasmine observed, impressed by his retained knowledge. "The stars are constant," Elijah replied. "They're always there, even when we can't see them through the clouds or city lights. I find that comforting somehow." "Like old friends," Jasmine suggested, "waiting to be rediscovered when conditions are right." "Exactly," Elijah agreed, tightening his arm around her shoulders. "Like us." They fell into a comfortable silence then, sipping their hot chocolate and gazing at the celestial display above them. The night was peaceful, the only sounds the gentle rustle of wind through the trees and the occasional distant call of a night bird. "Do you remember the night we broke up?" Jasmine asked suddenly, her voice quiet in the darkness. Elijah tensed slightly beside her. "I do," he admitted. "It was right after I got my acceptance to Embry-Riddle. We were on the roof of your dorm, looking at the stars, not nearly as clear as these, but still beautiful. I knew as soon as you told me about the acceptance that things were going to change," Jasmine said. "I was so proud of you, but also so afraid of losing you." "And I was afraid of holding you back," Elijah replied, his voice soft with old regret. "You were so determined to stay at Howard, to follow your path to law school. I thought asking you to wait for me, to commit to a long-distance relationship with no clear end date, would be selfish." "We were both trying to do the right thing," Jasmine observed. "Trying to be unselfish, to give each other freedom. And instead, we gave up something precious," Elijah said. "Something I didn't fully appreciate until it was gone." Jasmine turned slightly to look at his profile, illuminated by the starlight. "Do you regret it? Our decision to end things, then?" Elijah considered the question carefully. "I regret the pain it caused," he said finally. "I regret the years we lost. But I don't know if we would have made it then. With the distance and our demanding programs, we were still finding ourselves, still becoming the people we were meant to be." "And now?" Jasmine asked softly. "Now I know exactly who I am," Elijah replied with quiet certainty. "I'm a pilot who loves the sky and the stars. I'm a man who has traveled the world but still feels most at home in moments like this, with someone who understands him. I'm someone who lost his way once but is determined not to make the same mistake again." His words hung in the night air, a declaration and a promise wrapped in the simple truth of who he had become. Jasmine felt something settle within her, a certainty that matched his own. "I know who I am too," she said. "I'm an attorney who fights for what's right and fair. I'm a woman who has built a successful career but still believes in the power of connection, of having someone to share both struggles and triumphs with. I'm someone who thought she had moved on but realized, the moment she saw you again, that some connections can't be broken by time or distance." Elijah turned to face her fully now, his expression serious in the starlight. "So where does that leave us, Jas? Two people who know who they are, who have established lives and careers, who live on opposite sides of a bay but share a history and, I hope, a future." "It leaves us here," Jasmine said simply, reaching up to touch his face. "Under the stars, holding your grandfather's compass, finding our way forward together. Day by day, mile by mile, whatever it takes." Elijah leaned into her touch, his eyes never leaving hers. "It won't always be easy," he cautioned. "My schedule is unpredictable. Your work is demanding." "Nothing worth having comes easy," Jasmine replied. "We know that better than most. But I think we're both finally in a place where we can make this work, if we want it badly enough." "I want it," Elijah said without hesitation. "I want you, us, a second chance at what we started all those years ago." "I want that too," Jasmine admitted softly. "More than I realized until I saw you again." Their lips met in a kiss that felt like both a beginning and a continuation, a promise and a fulfillment. Above them, the stars witnessed their reunion, constant and brilliant in the velvet darkness of the night sky. When they finally parted, Elijah rested his forehead against hers, his breath warm on her face. "Stay with me tonight," he requested softly. "There's a small inn not far from here where I've reserved a room. Nothing has to happen, I'm not ready to say goodbye yet." "I'm not either," Jasmine agreed. "And I packed an overnight bag, remember?" Elijah laughed, the sound bright with happiness. "You did. Always prepared, counselor." "I try to anticipate all possible outcomes," she replied with a smile. And this one seemed hopeful. They stayed on the mountain a while longer, watching as the stars continued their stately dance across the sky. Elijah pointed out satellites moving in their orbits, the occasional shooting star streaking briefly through the darkness. Each celestial event felt like a blessing on their reunion, a cosmic affirmation of the path they had chosen to walk together. Finally, as the night air grew colder and their hot chocolate was long finished, they packed up their picnic and made their way back to Elijah's SUV. The drive to the inn was short but beautiful, the winding mountain road illuminated by the SUV's headlights and the bright moon that had risen while they stargazed. The inn was exactly as Elijah had described, small, charming, with a rustic elegance that spoke of comfort without pretension. Their room featured a stone fireplace, a king-sized bed with a handmade quilt, and windows that looked out over the forested slopes of Mount Tamalpais. "This is perfect," Jasmine said as she took in their surroundings. "How did you find this place?" "One of the flight attendants I work with recommended it," Elijah explained, setting down their bags. "Her family has been coming here for years. She said it was romantic without being overly fancy." "She was right," Jasmine agreed, moving to the window to look out at the moonlit landscape. "It's beautiful." Elijah came to stand behind her, his arms encircling her waist as he rested his chin on her shoulder. "Not as beautiful as you," he murmured. Jasmine leaned back against him, feeling the solid warmth of his chest against her back. "Charmer," she accused lightly, though the compliment pleased her. "Just honest," Elijah replied, pressing a kiss to the side of her neck. They stood that way for a long moment, watching the moonlight play over the trees, content in each other's presence. Then, by mutual unspoken agreement, they prepared for bed, moving around each other with the comfortable familiarity they had rediscovered the night they had spent at Elijah's apartment. When they finally slid beneath the covers, Elijah opened his arms in invitation, and Jasmine went to him willingly, settling against his side with her head on his shoulder. It felt right, this closeness, this intimacy that went beyond the physical to something deeper and more profound, a recognition of belonging, of coming home. "Thank you for today," Jasmine said softly, her hand resting over his heart. "For the stars, for the compass, for everything." "Thank you for giving us a second chance," Elijah replied, his fingers tracing gentle patterns on her shoulder. "For being open to the possibility that what we had isn't finished yet." "It's just beginning," Jasmine assured him, tilting her head up to meet his eyes in the dim light of the room. "The best is yet to come." Elijah kissed her then, a tender, gentle kiss that spoke of patience and promise, of a future they would build together day by day. When they parted, Jasmine settled back against his shoulder, and they fell into a comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds outside their window and the steady rhythm of each other's breathing. As sleep began to claim them, Jasmine found herself thinking of the unexpected chain of events that had brought them to this moment, A routine flight, an entitled passenger demanding a seat change, a pilot recognizing the woman being asked to move. It all seemed so improbable, so dependent on precise timing and circumstance that it felt almost like fate. She didn't normally believe in such things, preferring to see life as a series of choices and consequences rather than predetermined paths. But lying here in Elijah's arms, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her hand, she couldn't help but wonder if perhaps there were forces at work in the universe that occasionally intervened to right old wrongs, to provide second chances to those who deserved them. Whatever the explanation, fate, chance, or simply the intersection of two lives that had never truly disconnected, Jasmine was grateful for it. Grateful for the blonde woman who had demanded her seat, for the flight attendant who had summoned the captain, for the moment of recognition that had changed everything. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the logistics of dating across the bay, the demands of their respective careers, the practical considerations of building a relationship in their busy adult lives. But tonight, in the peaceful quiet of the Mountain Inn, those concerns seemed distant and manageable. Tonight was for appreciation, for gratitude, for the simple joy of being together again after so long apart. "Sweet dreams, Jas," Elijah murmured, his voice already heavy with approaching sleep. "Sweet dreams, Eli," she replied softly, pressing a gentle kiss to his shoulder before closing her eyes. As they drifted off together, the compass Elijah had given her rested on the bedside table, its needle pointing steadily north, a symbol of the direction they had found together, a promise of the journey ahead. Outside the window, the stars continued their eternal dance across the night sky, bearing witness to the reunion of two souls who had found their way back to each other against all odds. In the days, weeks, and months that followed, Jasmine and Elijah would navigate the complexities of merging their separate lives into a shared future. There would be challenges, missed calls due to international flights, late nights at the office preparing for important cases, the occasional disagreement as they relearned each other's habits and preferences. But through it all, they would maintain the connection they had rediscovered, strengthening it with each obstacle overcome, each compromise reached, each moment of joy shared. They would establish traditions, stargazing on Mount Tamalpais whenever Elijah's schedule allowed, Sunday brunches at a cafe halfway between Oakland and San Francisco, surprise visits to each other's workplaces when the opportunity arose. They would learn to make the most of their time together while respecting the demands of their individual careers, finding a balance that allowed both to thrive professionally while nurturing their relationship. And eventually, after careful consideration and much discussion, they would make the decision to establish a shared home, a cozy house in Sausalito with views of both the bay and the stars, close enough to the airport for Elijah's commute, and with a dedicated office space for Jasmine to work remotely when court appearances didn't require her presence in Oakland. But all of that lay in the future, a path yet to be walked. For now, in the peaceful quiet of the Mountain Inn, they slept in each other's arms, reunited by chance, by fate, or perhaps simply by the actions of a difficult passenger who had unwittingly set in motion a chain of events that would change two lives forever. Sometimes, as Jasmine would reflect in the years to come, the most beautiful destinations are reached by the most unexpected routes. And sometimes, the journey home begins with someone trying to make you move. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.